Have you ever noticed how a fresh start can feel like a promise you're supposed to earn, like a clean page you're only allowed to touch if you become someone new overnight, as if the calendar flips and your heart must suddenly be flawless, calm, confident, and perfect? And if you are not, then you have somehow failed the year before it even begins. Tonight, I want to offer you a different beginning, one that doesn't demand you erase your past, one that doesn't ask you to abandon who you are, one that doesn't punish you for the days you struggled, the days you doubted, the days you carried too much and still tried to be kind. This beginning is quiet, it is gentle, it is ancient, and it starts in the most unexpected place, not in your plans, not in your goals, not in your achievements, but in the simple warmth of loving kindness, in the soft training of the heart. Imagine a dark, candlelit temple in the deep hours of night, where the world outside has grown still, where the air is calm and cool, and the only movement is the small flicker of flames along the floor, candles placed like tiny stars guiding the eyes into rest. The wooden beams overhead are shadowed, the walls are simple, and the quiet feels old, as if it has been waiting for you for a long time. In the center of the hall sits a teacher in plain robes, Buddha as a human monk, serene and steady, eyes closed, face softened by candlelight, so calm that you almost forget the mind can be noisy at all. You step in without noise, because something in you already understands that the anxious mind grows louder when you rush, and the heart becomes calmer when you move slowly. You sit down, and for a moment you feel the weight of your body settling, as if gravity itself is a gentle promise. You do not have to hold everything up tonight. Your shoulders drop, not as an achievement, but as relief, as if you are finally placing down a bag you have carried for months, maybe for years. You let your hands rest where they fall, and you allow your face to stop performing, as if no one is watching you, because here, in this quiet, no one is asking you to prove anything. And then, almost immediately, your mind begins its familiar work. It brings up what you wish you had done. It brings up what you wish you had not done. It brings up the conversations that still sting, the choices you still question, the moments you replay in the dark as if replaying could rewrite them. It brings up the future and asks you to guarantee it will be kind. It brings up the old fear that you are behind, that you are not enough, that you will repeat the same mistakes, that you will arrive at the end of another year still carrying the same ache. This is why the beginning must be soft, because a harsh beginning tightens the body, and a tight body feeds a tight mind. A harsh beginning teaches the mind that love must be earned, and if love must be earned, rest must be earned too, and then sleep becomes another task you fail. So tonight, we begin the year the way a wise person begins a long journey, by setting down what is not needed right now, by letting the nervous system hear a new message, by letting the heart be met with friendliness. Let your jaw loosen gently, not forced, only softened. Let your belly soften, because the belly holds so many silent alarms. And let your exhale become longer than your inhale, slow, warm, quiet, like a candle's breath leaving the body. If it helps, let your attention rest on the candlelight for one moment, not to stare, not to think, only to receive that small, steady glow, and then bring your attention back to the breath, as if your breath is a lantern you can carry inside. You do not need to silence thoughts to begin. You only need to stop fighting them, because the fight is what keeps the fire burning, and the fire is what keeps you awake. In this temple, The teacher does not tell you to get rid of your mind. He does not demand perfection. Instead, he invites you to see your mind the way you would see weather moving across the sky, clouds passing, winds shifting, rain coming and going. Weather is not identity. Weather is conditions, and your thoughts tonight are conditions. They are not a verdict about you. They are not a prophecy. They are only movement. The teacher speaks softly, as if he is speaking to the nervous system itself, not to your intellect. A fresh start, he says, is not a clean past. A fresh start is a clean relationship with the present. You want to argue, because the anxious mind always wants to argue, always wants to prove, always wants to fix the whole world before it rests. But the candlelight is gentle, and the quiet is steady, and something in you becomes willing to listen. He continues, and his voice feels like a hand placed on the shoulder. You have been trying to begin by changing everything, but the beginning that lasts begins with kindness. Not the kind of kindness that denies truth, the kind of kindness that can hold truth without cruelty. He invites you to place one hand lightly over your chest, not as performance, not as ritual for someone else, but as a private signal to your heart. I am here. I am listening. I am not abandoning you tonight. And then he offers the first practice of loving kindness, not as bright positivity, not as cheerful pretending, but as a warm, dim candle inside you, steady, gentle, enough. Start with yourself, he says, not because you are selfish, because if you cannot be kind to your own mind, your kindness will always run out. On a slow exhale, you whisper inwardly, as if speaking to the most exhausted part of you. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. The phrases are simple, but simplicity is powerful at night. The mind cannot hold complicated philosophy when it is tired, but it can hold a gentle wish. And the nervous system hears wishes differently than it hears demands. You repeat them again, slowly, with the long exhale, as if each sentence is a warm blanket placed on the body. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. At first, the words may feel empty, like you are speaking into a room that has been locked for years. But do not judge that. Locked rooms open slowly. Trust is built gradually. Even a small wish is a new seed. Even a single sincere sentence can be a turning point, not because it changes the whole world, but because it changes the way you meet your own heart. The teacher seems to know exactly what you are struggling with, because he speaks again. Your mind may say, I don't deserve this. That is the voice of an old wound, not the voice of wisdom. You feel that voice, the one that keeps score, the one that measures, the one that reviews your life like a courtroom. And as you feel it, you realize something quietly shocking. You have been trying to start anew while carrying a whip. No one runs well while being whipped from behind, so the teacher gives you a different instruction, firm in its kindness. Tonight, he says, you do not need to be forgiven by the whole world. You only need to stop punishing yourself in the dark. And the words land in you like warm water, because punishment has started to feel normal, like background noise, like something you assume must always be there. And then the teacher introduces the practice of beginning anew in a way that feels human and kind. You can begin again, he says, in 3 breaths. In the first breath, he continues, you acknowledge what is true, not with shame, with honesty. You do not hide from your year. You do not pretend. You simply admit, there were moments of pain, moments of confusion, moments of regret. You take the first breath, and the first exhale leaves you slowly, as if it is carrying away the need to pretend. You admit, quietly, that you did not always know what to do, that you reacted sometimes, that you avoided things you should have faced, that you tried your best with the understanding you had. You let honesty be simple and clean, not theatrical, not punishing, just true. In the second breath, the teacher says, you offer forgiveness, not as approval of harmful actions, not as denial of responsibility, but as release. You release the extra suffering you have been adding. You take the second breath, and on the exhale you whisper, may I learn, may I release, may I begin again. In the third breath, the teacher says, you plant a seed, one seed, not 1,000 goals, one seed of intention, gentle, clear, kind. You take the third breath, and you choose a seed that feels true for your heart tonight. May I be kinder to my own mind. May I return when I wander. May I rest when I am tired. The temple remains quiet. The candles remain soft. The world outside remains dark. And you begin to understand that this is what the practice is, not a grand transformation, but a steady return, a steady warming, a steady softening. The anxious mind tries to interrupt because it is used to being in charge, used to scanning for danger, used to demanding certainty. It says, but what about everything you need to fix? And the teacher answers without anger, as if speaking to a frightened child. In the morning, he says, what can be fixed will be fixed in daylight. Tonight, we do not fix. Tonight, we heal. This is the boundary of your fresh start. You stop forcing the night to become a workshop. You stop making bedtime a battlefield. You allow the dark to do what it does best: restore, quiet, soften, renew. You let rest be your first act of wisdom, because a rested mind can choose more wisely than a mind burned all night by worry. The teacher invites you to widen loving kindness just a little, not to the whole world yet, not to people who overwhelm you, not to difficult memories, just to the version of you who tried, the you who kept going even when the heart was heavy, the you who made mistakes and still wanted to be good. Picture that version of yourself sitting beside you in the candlelight, not as a stranger, but as a tired companion. Look at them with tenderness, as if the simple fact of trying is already worthy of respect. On the long exhale, you whisper to them, may you be safe, may you be calm, may you be at ease. And something in you loosens, because the mind has been carrying a hidden loneliness, the loneliness of being the only one inside your life who never offers comfort. The teacher speaks again, very softly. Loving kindness is not a mood, he says. It is a direction. It is how you turn the mind toward peace. So tonight, the direction is simple. When you notice tension, you soften. When you notice worry, you name it gently and you return to the exhale. When you notice self-attack, you replace it with a quiet wish. Again and again, not to win, not to prove, but to train the heart the way you train a lantern to stay lit in wind. He offers a short verse, simple, meant to settle into the nervous system like a lullaby. Soft breath, warm light, quiet heart, slow night. I begin again with kindness. Then he adds one more instruction, a final gift for the anxious mind that tries to plan the entire year at midnight. Before you sleep, he says, do not ask your mind to solve everything. Ask your heart one question only. What would kindness do next? What would kindness do next? It would soften the jaw. It would lengthen the exhale. It would stop the inner argument. It would allow rest. And rest, in this teaching, is not laziness. Rest is the foundation of clarity. So remain here for a few moments longer in this candlelit temple, with the quiet teacher, with the soft flames, with your breath moving like a calm river, and let your fresh start be real. Not a fantasy of perfection, but the simple act of meeting yourself without cruelty. Because the year does not begin when the calendar changes. The year begins the moment your mind stops fighting your heart, the moment you whisper sincerely, even once, "May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease." Repeat it slowly, with a long exhale. Let the body begin to believe you. Let the night become what it was meant to be, an open door into rest, a quiet beginning, a gentle start. On the second night, the temple feels the same, and yet you arrive different. Because once you have tasted even a small drop of loving kindness, you begin to notice how thirsty you have been for years, and how much of your tiredness has not come from work alone, but from the silent pressure of carrying regret like a stone in your pocket. A stone you keep touching in the dark to remind yourself of what you did wrong, what you should have done, what you should have known, as if pain could be proof of responsibility. You step again into the candlelit hall, where the air is cool and still, where soft flames sit low along the floor in simple holders, and the light does not shout, it only breathes, and the shadows are deep and calm, and the world outside is far away, and in the center sits the teacher, Buddha as a human monk, eyes closed, face relaxed, posture steady, as if he is holding the night itself in silence. You sit down with care, because you are learning that care is not weakness, it is wisdom, and you let your shoulders drop, you let your jaw loosen, you let your belly soften, and you let the exhale lengthen, slow and warm, as if each breath is lowering you gently into rest. And then, the mind does what it always does when the noise outside disappears. It brings up your past like a lantern turned backward, showing you the moments you wish you could rewrite, the words you wish you could swallow, the choices you wish you could undo. And even if nothing terrible happened, even if the mistake was small, the anxious mind loves to magnify it, because magnifying feels like control, and control feels like safety. Tonight, the teaching is simple and deep. Regret can be a teacher, but guilt is a jailer, and if you confuse the two, you will keep punishing yourself in the dark and calling the punishment growth. Regret, when it is wise, is clear and brief. It says, "That was not skillful," and it points you toward a better direction, and then it releases you to live. Guilt, when it is unwise, is sticky and endless. It says, "That is who you are," and it drags you under the surface until you cannot breathe. The Buddha's path does not deny mistakes. It does not demand you pretend you never harmed anyone, including yourself. But it also does not ask you to whip yourself until you are exhausted. It asks you to see clearly, to learn, and to begin again without cruelty. The teacher speaks softly, and his voice feels like candlelight on skin, warm but gentle, never burning. If you want a fresh start, he says, do not try to build it on hatred. Hatred is not stable ground. You feel the truth of this in your body, because you know what it's like to promise yourself change while your chest is tight with self-attack, and you know how quickly those promises collapse, not because you are weak, but because they were built on tension. He invites you tonight to practice something many people avoid because it feels too vulnerable, too honest, too close, to look directly at your regret without becoming it. Bring one memory, he says. Not the worst one, not the one that overwhelms you. Bring a memory that still pinches, a moment you still replay. You hesitate because the mind fears that if it opens the door to regret, regret will flood the room. But the teacher's calm is steady, and the candles are quiet, and you remember the first lesson. You do not have to fight what arises. You only have to stop feeding it. So you bring a moment, a small scene, maybe a conversation, maybe a missed opportunity, maybe a time you were tired and sharp, maybe a time you abandoned your own needs, maybe a time you followed fear instead of truth. You let it appear like an image in soft focus, and immediately the mind wants to attack you, to explain, to justify, to punish, to replay. But the teacher stops you gently with a single instruction. Do not tell the story, he says. Feel the lesson. This changes everything, because story is where guilt multiplies, but lesson is where wisdom lives. You let the image remain at a distance, and you bring attention to the body, and you notice what regret feels like as sensation. A weight in the chest, a tightness in the throat, a heat in the face, a sinking in the belly. You breathe slowly, and you do not push the feeling away, and you do not dive into it, and you simply let it be held by awareness, the way the river holds the reflection of the moon without trying to keep it. The teacher speaks again. Now, he says, name what you wish you had done differently, but do it with kindness. Kindness, you realize, is not denying responsibility. It is refusing to turn responsibility into self-hatred. So you name it quietly, as if speaking to yourself with respect. I wish I had spoken more gently. Or, I wish I had paused. Or, I wish I had been honest. Or, I wish I had rested before I reacted. The exact words do not matter as much as the tone. Not a knife, but a hand. And then the teacher teaches you how to transform regret into a seed, because the Buddha's path is not only about seeing suffering, it is about ending unnecessary suffering through wise action. There are 3 steps, he says, and they are enough. First, acknowledge. You acknowledge what happened without pretending it did not happen, because denial keeps the wound alive in shadow, and shadow always makes it larger. Second, forgive. Not as approval, not as excuse, but as release of the extra suffering you add by replaying and punishing. Third, intend. You choose one gentle intention for the future, one skillful direction, one seed you can water in daylight. You breathe in, you breathe out, and you realize how human this is, how doable, how different from your old habit of demanding a total transformation overnight. The teacher asks you to place your hand over your chest again, lightly, and to speak a few phrases on the exhale, as if each phrase is a small door opening. On the first slow exhale, I acknowledge. On the second slow exhale, I forgive. On the third slow exhale, I begin again. At first you feel resistance, because the mind that is used to punishment does not trust forgiveness. It believes forgiveness will make you careless. It believes forgiveness will erase the lesson. It believes you must suffer to prove you care. But the teacher's voice is steady. Suffering is not proof of goodness, he says. Suffering is only suffering. Wisdom is what you do next. Then he tells you a Zen story, quiet and sharp, like a bell that rings once and then leaves silence behind. A young monk once walked to a river carrying a clay pot filled with water. The path was uneven, and the monk's thoughts were busy, and his grip was tense, and when he stumbled, the pot cracked and water spilled. The monk panicked. He tried to press the crack closed with his fingers. He tried to save every drop. He blamed himself. He cursed the ground. He replayed the moment again and again. Then an older monk approached, watched quietly, and said, "Stop." The younger monk looked up, ashamed, and the older monk asked, Is the pot already cracked? The younger monk nodded. The older monk asked, Can you uncrack it by hating yourself? The younger monk fell silent. The older monk then said, Put the pot down. Drink what remains. Learn how to walk with steadier attention next time. Then go and find a new pot. And when the younger monk protested, But I ruined it, the older monk replied, No, you learned. That is not ruin. That is life. Tonight, your regret is the cracked pot. The past is already done. You cannot uncrack it by hatred. So you do what is wise. You drink what remains, meaning you receive the lesson, and then you put the pot down, meaning you stop replaying the moment until it steals your rest, and you take a new step, meaning you plant a gentle intention for tomorrow. The teacher's candlelight seems to soften even more, and he speaks as if he knows the secret fear beneath your guilt, the fear that you are not worthy of peace. Many people, he says, think peace is a reward for being perfect. But peace is not a reward. Peace is a practice. Peace is what you grow when you stop harming yourself. You breathe out slowly, and you feel the truth of it, because you know how often you have harmed yourself with words that no one else could hear, words you would never say to someone you love. You have called yourself names. You have threatened yourself with the future. You have judged your heart for feeling what it feels. You have demanded more from yourself than you would demand from any tired human being. And the teacher, without accusation, invites you to stop. Tonight, he says, make a vow of gentleness, not a vow that you will never make mistakes again, a vow that you will not meet your mistakes with cruelty. This vow is small, but it is powerful, because it changes the climate of your inner life, and climate is what determines whether the mind becomes a garden or a battlefield. Now the teacher guides you into loving kindness again, but tonight with a different emphasis. Tonight, loving kindness is not only a warm wish, it is medicine for shame. He asks you to repeat slowly, on the long exhale, phrases that do not pretend you are flawless, phrases that include your humanity. Even with my mistakes, you whisper inwardly, may I be at peace. Even with my regrets, you whisper inwardly, may I be gentle. Even with my imperfect past, you whisper inwardly, may I begin again. These phrases do something the anxious mind finds shocking. They remove the condition that you must be perfect to be worthy of rest. And when that condition is removed, the nervous system relaxes, because it is no longer running an endless race for approval. The teacher watches you breathe, and then he adds something practical, because wisdom must touch real life, not just the meditation cushion. If you truly need to repair something, he says, do it in daylight. If you truly need to apologize, do it with clarity. If you truly need to change a habit, do it with patience. But do not do repairs in the middle of the night by tearing yourself apart. That is not repair. That is harm. So tonight, if your mind says, I must fix everything, you answer, softly and firmly, in the morning. In the morning. Not now. The night is for healing. And if the mind brings the memory again, you say, I acknowledge. And you take one slow breath. You say, I forgive. And you take one slow breath. You say, I intend. And you take one slow breath. Then you return to the simple reality of your body resting on the ground, supported, held, safe enough in this moment to soften. Now, because the mind loves to cling to fresh start as a dramatic event, the teacher offers you a deeper view. The fresh start is not a day, not a date, not a perfect morning. The fresh start is a movement you can do at any time, even now, even at midnight, even with regret in your chest. You can begin again, he says, in one breath. When you notice you are lost, you return. That return is the beginning. And to make this real in your body, he gives you a small physical practice. On each exhale, soften one place: jaw, shoulders, belly, hands, forehead, one place at a time, like laying down weapons one by one. And as you soften, notice how guilt and tension are connected. Guilt makes the body brace. The braced body tells the mind danger. The mind searches for danger. The search finds your past again. The past becomes a courtroom. The courtroom increases guilt. The cycle continues. But when you soften the body, you break the cycle at its root, because you are telling your nervous system, we are not in danger right now. We are in a quiet room. We are safe enough to rest. So you breathe, slow and warm, and you let the candlelight be what it is. And you let the teacher's stillness remind you that peace is not something you earn through punishment. It is something you cultivate through wise gentleness. Then the teacher asks you to widen loving kindness slightly beyond yourself, but still in a calm way that does not excite the mind. He asks you to think of one person who has been kind to you, even in a small way, someone whose presence does not create pressure. You picture them softly, not vividly, just enough, and on the exhale you whisper, "May you be safe. May you be at peace. May you be at ease." This is not a performance. It is a simple widening of the heart, because hearts that widen become less trapped in shame, and less trapped hearts sleep more easily. And then, gently, the teacher invites you to bring loving kindness back to yourself again, as if closing a circle. May I be safe. May I be at peace. May I be at ease. May I begin again. You repeat it slowly, as the candles flicker and the shadows remain calm, and you begin to feel something that is not dramatic, not bright, not loud, but real. A small inner permission, a quiet release, the sense that your past does not have to be a chain, and that your regret does not have to be a prison, and that learning can be gentle, and that you can carry wisdom forward without carrying a whip. The teacher offers a short verse, and the rhythm of it is slow enough for sleep. I see what was, I learn, I bless. I set it down, and breathe in rest. And then he returns to silence, because silence is also teaching, and in that silence you feel your breath like a soft rope anchoring you to the present, and you feel the floor supporting you without asking anything in return, and you realize that maybe this is what the fresh start truly is. Not a perfect life, but an honest heart that stops punishing itself, a tired mind that learns to release, a human being who begins again with kindness. So tonight, if the memory returns, do not be afraid. Do not fight. Simply do the 3 steps again, as gently as you can, as many times as you need. Acknowledge, forgive, intend. Then return to the long exhale. Return to softness. Return to the fact that the night is not asking you to solve your whole year. The night is only asking you to rest, so that tomorrow you can live with clearer eyes. And as you keep breathing, slowly, warmly, and as you keep offering loving kindness to the parts of you that still feel ashamed, the anxious mind begins to lose its sharpness, because it is no longer being fed by inner violence, and the candlelit temple becomes quieter inside you, and you begin to drift toward sleep, not as an escape, but as a gentle renewal, a soft beginning, a fresh start that does not erase your past, but releases the extra suffering you have been carrying, so your heart can finally rest. On the 3rd night, you arrive with a quieter mind than before, not because the mind has become perfect, not because thoughts have stopped visiting, but because you have begun to understand a gentle truth that changes the entire direction of your inner life. The fresh start is not a dramatic moment. It is a practice of planting, and planting is slow, and planting does not look like fireworks. It looks like a hand touching soil in the dark with patience. It looks like choosing one small seed instead of demanding a whole forest overnight. You step into the same candlelit temple, and the air is cool, and the flames are low and steady, and the shadows do not feel threatening anymore. They feel protective, like the temple is holding you from the noise of the world. The teacher sits in the center as before, Buddha as a human monk, eyes closed, posture steady, the calm of his presence so real that it feels like a warm cloth placed on your shoulders. You sit down, and you let the body settle, and you remember what has already helped you. You soften the jaw, you soften the shoulders, you soften the belly, and you lengthen the exhale as if you are gently turning down the volume of the day. And yet, as soon as you become still, a new kind of restlessness appears. A restlessness that is not just anxiety, not just regret, but a subtle pressure that sounds like ambition mixed with fear, like the mind trying to climb a mountain in the middle of the night. It whispers, "If I am starting fresh, I must change everything." It whispers, "I must become better immediately." It whispers, "I must set perfect goals." It whispers, "If I don't do it right, I will waste the year." It whispers, "I need a plan that guarantees success." This is a very common trap, and it is gentle in its disguise, because it wears the face of motivation. It wears the face of responsibility. But beneath it is the same old need for control and certainty, the same old fear of being disappointed, the same old fear that you will not follow through, that you will fall back into old habits, that you will prove your harsh inner critic correct. The teacher seems to sense this immediately, because he speaks as if answering a question you did not ask out loud. A fresh start is not a promise you make to impress your fear, he says. A fresh start is a seed you plant to nourish your life. You breathe out slowly, because you feel how true that is. A promise made to impress fear is always tense. It is always sharp. It is always demanding. It feels like a contract written with clenched teeth. But a seed planted to nourish life feels different. It feels gentle. It feels honest. It feels possible. The teacher continues, and his voice is calm enough to settle the room inside you. When the mind is anxious, he says, it asks for certainty. When the heart is wise, it chooses direction. Direction is different from certainty. Direction does not require guarantees. Direction only requires one step. He invites you to imagine something simple, a small garden behind the temple, hidden from the wind, where the soil is dark and rich, where the night air is cool, where the moonlight falls softly, not bright, not loud, just enough to see the outline of a path. In the garden, there is a low wooden box of seeds, not thousands, not endless choices, just a few seeds carefully kept. The teacher tells you to picture your year the way a gardener pictures a season, not as a test you must pass, but as a field you will tend. A gardener does not shout at the soil, he says. A gardener does not demand that a seed become a tree by morning. A gardener chooses a seed, places it gently, waters it, and then returns again and again. This is the rhythm the anxious mind forgets. The anxious mind wants the result without the season. It wants the flower without the winter. It wants the harvest without the watering. It wants transformation without patience. And when it cannot get that, it panics. Then it gives up. Then it calls itself a failure. Then it starts again with harshness. And the cycle repeats. So tonight, the teacher offers you a different approach, a middle way for change, a way that is both honest and gentle, both grounded and compassionate. He says, "Tonight, you will choose one intention, not 10, not 20, one, and it will be small enough to be real." Your mind immediately protests because it wants to feel impressive. It wants to feel like you are doing something big, but the teacher's calm does not move. One, he repeats, because one seed can become a garden if you return to it. He asks you to look inward and notice what your mind tries to do when it hears the word intention. Does it rush toward perfection? Does it rush toward a dramatic identity? Does it rush toward punishment? Does it rush toward a rigid schedule you cannot keep? Does it rush toward comparison, imagining how others are doing more than you? You notice these movements, and you name them quietly, because naming is how you step out of a spell. Rushing, perfection, comparing, pressure. Then you return to the long exhale, and you feel the body settle again, and you remember that the goal tonight is not to excite the mind. The goal is to calm it. The teacher gives you a simple instruction that feels like a small bell in the room. Choose an intention that makes your nervous system softer, he says, not tighter. This is a powerful filter. Many people choose intentions that create more tension, and then they wonder why they cannot maintain them. They choose goals that feel like threats. They choose habits as punishments. They choose change as self-attack. But the Buddha's wisdom is kinder. It teaches that the mind learns best in safety. The heart opens best when it is not being whipped. So you take a slow breath and you ask yourself very gently, what intention would make me softer? Perhaps it is, I will speak to myself more kindly. Perhaps it is, I will return to my breath when I feel overwhelmed. Perhaps it is, I will rest before I break. Perhaps it is, I will practice loving kindness for 5 minutes each night. Perhaps it is, I will do one small, honest step each day. The teacher nods as if he can hear your thoughts. Good, he says. Now make it smaller. Smaller feels strange at first, because we are trained to think bigger is better. But the teacher is not building your year from ego. He is building your year from reality. He is building it from a foundation the anxious mind can actually stand on. So you make it smaller. If your intention is loving kindness, it becomes 1 minute of loving kindness before sleep. If your intention is mindfulness, it becomes 3 slow exhales when I notice anxiety. If your intention is kindness toward yourself, it becomes 1 gentle sentence when I catch self-criticism. If your intention is rest, it becomes a 5-minute pause without phone before bed. You feel relief, not because the year has become smaller, but because your burden has become more human. Then the teacher teaches you how to plant the seed properly, because planting is not only choosing. Planting is placing, and placing requires a calm hand. He says, your intention needs a home. Choose a moment where it will live. This is where wisdom becomes practical. An intention without a home becomes a wish floating in the air. But an intention placed into a moment becomes a habit with roots. So you choose a home. Perhaps it lives when you turn off the light. Perhaps it lives when you place your head on the pillow. Perhaps it lives when you wash your hands in the evening. Perhaps it lives when you make your first cup of tea in the morning. The teacher wants you to attach the seed to something already happening, because then your nervous system does not have to fight the chaos of memory. He says, the mind forgets, but the body remembers a ritual. Now he guides you into a short, loving kindness practice that becomes the actual planting of the seed. The candles flicker gently. The room is quiet. The teacher's voice is low and slow. Place your hand over your chest, he says, and speak to yourself as you would speak to someone you love who is trying. You place your hand. You feel warmth beneath your palm. You feel the rise and fall of your breath. On the first long exhale, you whisper inwardly, "May I be safe." On the second long exhale, "May I be calm." On the third long exhale, "May I be at ease." The words are familiar now, but tonight they settle deeper because you are not using them as a desperate rescue. You are using them as a daily seed. The teacher adds one more phrase, and it feels like it belongs to beginnings. "May I begin again, gently." You repeat it slowly. "May I begin again, gently." And then something important happens. The mind tries to measure this moment, tries to rate it, tries to decide whether the practice was good enough. It tries to judge your sincerity. It tries to judge your calm. It tries to judge your future consistency. This is how the anxious mind steals peace. It turns even peace into a performance. The teacher seems to anticipate this, and he says very softly, "Do not grade the seed. Water it." This sentence lands like a stone placed in the center of a noisy stream, changing the current. Do not grade the seed. Water it. The teacher then tells you a Zen story, and the story is simple, but it stays with you because it speaks directly to the anxious mind's obsession with results. A student once came to a master and said, "I have started meditating, but I don't feel different yet. I want proof that it is working." The master led him to a bamboo shoot in the garden, barely taller than a finger, and he said, "Pull it up." The student stared. "Why would I pull it up?" The master said, "So you can see how much it has grown." The student said, "But if I pull it up, it will die." The master nodded. "Exactly," he said. "This is what you do to your practice when you keep pulling it up for proof. Leave it in the soil. Water it. Return. And one day you will look up and realize you are living differently." The anxious mind wants to pull the bamboo up every day. It wants evidence. It wants certainty. It wants immediate transformation. But the path is not built on frantic proof. The path is built on quiet returning. So tonight, the teacher invites you to make a gentle agreement with yourself, an agreement that protects your seed from the anxious mind's harshness. He says, for this year, do not ask yourself, "Am I perfect?" Ask yourself, "Did I return?" Return is the practice. Return is the seed being watered. Return is the fresh start happening again and again, not once. He teaches you a short, steady method for returning that you can use whenever anxiety rises, whenever the mind begins to spin, whenever you start to feel overwhelmed by the future. He calls it the 3 candles, because the temple is full of candlelight, and candlelight is a symbol your nervous system can remember. The first candle, he says, is breath. You take one slow breath, and you lengthen the exhale. The second candle, he says, is body. You soften one place, jaw, shoulders, belly, hands. The third candle, he says, is kindness. You offer one phrase, "May I be at ease." Breath, body, kindness. He tells you that when you do these 3, you are not avoiding life. You are training your mind to stop panicking. You are teaching your nervous system that it can settle without needing the world to be perfect. Then he speaks about new beginnings in a way that feels like deep wisdom, not motivation. Every day, he says, the mind will try to drag you back into the old patterns. This is not failure. This is conditioning. Do not hate conditioning. Understand it. The teacher explains, slowly, that habits are not moral verdicts. They are grooves, like riverbeds, carved by repetition. If you want a fresh start, You do not scream at the river. You dig a new channel gently by returning to it again and again until the water naturally flows there. This changes your attitude. You stop treating relapse as shame. You stop treating wandering as proof you cannot change. You begin to treat every return as a victory of awareness, quiet and clean. The teacher then invites you to expand loving kindness one small step beyond yourself, not as obligation, not as performance, but as a way to soften the heart so the mind can rest. Choose one person who feels easy, he says, someone you do not have to impress. You picture them softly, like a candle seen through mist, and on the long exhale, you whisper, "May you be safe. May you be calm. May you be at ease." Then you bring the circle back to yourself, because the practice must end where it can support your sleep. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. May I begin again, gently. The teacher's voice becomes even softer, and he speaks as if giving you the final instructions for the night, not to make you better, but to help you rest. Tonight, he says, your fresh start is complete if you do one thing, if you stop attacking yourself. This is not a small thing. This is the foundation of everything else. A mind at war cannot build a calm life. A heart under threat cannot bloom, so you let your hand fall back to rest. You let your shoulders sink. You let the jaw loosen. You let the exhale lengthen. You let your eyes soften behind closed lids. And if the mind tries again to plan the whole year, you whisper, "One seed, one seed." If the mind tries again to demand perfection, you whisper, "Water it, water it." If the mind tries again to measure your worth, you whisper, "Return, return." The candles continue their quiet flicker. The temple remains still. The teacher sits like a mountain in the dark, not forcing anything, only embodying what you are learning. That peace is grown, not seized. That a fresh start is a practice, not a performance. That loving kindness is not a decoration for your life. It is the soil where your life becomes gentler. So you allow the night to carry you now. You allow the seed to rest in the soil. You allow tomorrow to remain tomorrow. You do not pull the bamboo up to check it. You leave it. You breathe. You soften. You offer one last quiet wish, like a candle set beside your heart. May I begin again, gently. And as you repeat it with a long, warm exhale, the anxious mind grows quieter, not because it was defeated, but because it was finally given the one thing it has been asking for all along, a safe place to rest. On the fourth night, you enter the temple with a quieter step, not because life outside has become simpler, not because your year has suddenly become easy, but because something inside you has begun to change its posture, and you can feel it the way you feel the difference between a clenched hand and an open hand, the way you feel the difference between holding your breath and letting it flow. Because for the first time in a long time, you are learning to treat your own mind as something that can be guided, not something that must be crushed. The candlelit hall is the same. Low flames along the floor, warm light that does not glare, shadows that do not threaten, an air that feels cool and clean. And in the center the teacher sits, Buddha as a human monk, still as a mountain, eyes closed, face softened by amber glow, hands resting as if they have nothing to prove. You sit down, and you let your body remember what it has learned. You soften the jaw as if unclasping an old lock. You let your shoulders drop as if you are setting down a burden you carried without noticing. You soften the belly because the belly is where so many hidden alarms live. And you lengthen the exhale until it feels like the body is finally receiving the message it has been waiting for all day. You can stand down now, You can rest now. You do not have to keep watch for a moment. And then, as always, the mind arrives with its habits, because habits do not vanish simply because you have good intentions. The mind brings up lists, plans, unfinished tasks, small worries about tomorrow, doubts about whether you will stay consistent. And yet, tonight, something else rises too, something warmer and more human, something the anxious mind usually avoids because it feels too tender to touch, the presence of other people in your heart. Because a fresh start is not only personal improvement, a fresh start is the way you relate to life. And life is not only your thoughts. Life is also connection, love, care, longing, disappointment, grief, gratitude, all the invisible threads that tie you to others. Sometimes anxiety is not just fear. Sometimes anxiety is love that does not know how to rest. Love that tries to control. Love that worries itself into exhaustion. Love that clings because it believes clinging is the only way to keep what matters safe. So tonight, the teacher invites you into a deeper layer of loving kindness, a layer that is both gentle and powerful, because it changes not only your mood, but your whole inner climate. The practice of offering loving kindness to someone you care about, not as a performance, not as sentimental sweetness, but as a quiet training of the heart, like teaching a flame to burn steady in wind. The teacher speaks softly, and the softness is important, because the heart opens best when it is not being forced. Tonight, he says, you will widen your practice by one step. You have offered kindness to yourself. You have learned to begin again. Now you will offer kindness outward, not to escape yourself, not to distract from your own healing, but to strengthen the heart's natural warmth, because warmth calms the mind in a way that strategy never can. You feel a small hesitation, because perhaps your relationships are complicated. Perhaps you have people you miss, people you worry about, people you feel responsible for, people you wish were different, people you love and yet cannot control. And the mind, hearing the word others, immediately tries to turn the practice into another burden. Who should I help? Who needs me? What if I can't? What if I fail them? What if I lose them? The teacher seems to sense this, and he guides you more carefully. Choose someone who feels easy, he says. Not the most painful person, not the most complicated, not someone who triggers your fear. Choose a person whose presence makes your body soften, even a little. Someone who feels like a warm lamp in a dark hallway. You breathe out, slow and warm, and you let the mind choose naturally, like a hand reaching toward warmth. Perhaps it is a friend who once listened without judging. Perhaps it is a family member who has shown gentle care. Perhaps it is a mentor, a teacher, someone who helped you in a quiet moment. Perhaps it is even an animal, a loyal presence, if that feels safer. The teacher does not care about the label. He cares about the feeling of ease, because ease is the doorway. He asks you to picture this person softly, not in bright detail, not in a way that excites the mind, but in a calm, dim way, as if you are seeing them by candlelight through a gentle veil. You allow their image to appear the way a memory appears, when it is kind, not sharp, not demanding, only present. You notice what happens in your body when you do this. The chest may soften, the face may relax, the breath may deepen without effort. The nervous system recognizes warmth. This, the teacher says, is the heart remembering its natural direction. Then he gives you the phrases, simple and steady, meant to be repeated like the river's sound, meant to soothe, not to stimulate. On the exhale, he says, offer them a wish, not advice, not control, not a plan, just a wish. You take a slow breath, and on the long exhale you whisper inwardly, as if sending warmth through the air. May you be safe. May you be calm. May you be at ease. You repeat it again, not rushing, not performing, letting each phrase ride the exhale like a boat on quiet water. May you be safe. May you be calm. May you be at ease. And as you repeat, you may notice something surprising. The mind becomes quieter when it is not only circling itself, not because you are escaping, but because the heart is expanding, and an expanded heart gives the mind a wider sky. When the sky is wider, clouds feel less like threats. But the teacher does not let you drift into sweetness without wisdom, because he knows the mind's hidden trap, attachment disguised as love. So he speaks again, gently, with the clarity of someone who has seen this 1,000 times. Be careful, he says, not to confuse loving kindness with clinging. Loving kindness is a warm wish that does not grip. Clinging is a demand that life obey. When you love someone, your mind may try to control them to reduce your fear. But control is not love. Control is fear in a costume. This lands in you like a quiet truth, because you know how often you have worried for people you care about, and you know how worry feels like caring, and yet worry burns you and gives no peace. The teacher is not shaming you for worry. He is showing you a cleaner form of care, one that does not harm you. So tonight, when you offer loving kindness to this person, you do it with open hands, not with a fist. You do not say, "May you be safe because I made it so." You do not say, "May you be happy because life must follow my wishes." You simply offer warmth and release the outcome, because peace is found in the offering, not in the control. He gives you a small image to hold, because images are easier for the sleepy mind than complex instructions. Think of the candle, he says. When one candle lights another, the first candle does not become smaller, and the flame does not cling to the wick of the other candle. It simply burns. Warmth is given, and still the flame remains free. You look at the small flames along the floor, and you understand. The practice is like candlelight shared. It does not require force. It does not require proof. It does not require you to hold the world tightly. It is simply warmth offered. The teacher invites you to continue for several slow cycles of breath, letting the phrases become almost like a lullaby. And as you do, you notice where the mind tries to interfere. Perhaps it brings up fear. What if something happens to them? Perhaps it brings up sadness. I miss them. Perhaps it brings up guilt. I haven't done enough. Perhaps it brings up tension. I should fix their life. This is normal. The mind always tries to turn love into a problem to solve. So the teacher gives you another instruction, one that transforms the whole experience. If fear arises, he says, do not answer fear with more thinking. Answer fear with kindness. Offer the wish again and return to the breath. So if fear comes, you whisper, "May you be safe," and then you exhale slowly. If sadness comes, you whisper, "May you be at ease," and then you exhale slowly. If guilt comes, you whisper, "May you be calm," and then you exhale slowly. You are training the heart to respond to emotion with warmth, not with spinning. Then he asks you to take the practice one step deeper, and this is where the teaching becomes truly healing for the anxious mind that worries for others. He says, now include yourself inside the circle. Because many people offer kindness outward while starving inward. Many people can wish safety for someone else, but cannot wish it for themselves without resistance. Many people can be gentle to others, but brutal to their own heart. This creates imbalance, and imbalance creates exhaustion, and exhaustion feeds anxiety. So now, with the image of the person still softly present, you add yourself, not as the center of the universe, but as a living being equally worthy of peace. You let the circle of loving kindness include you both, like two candles in the same room. On the exhale, you whisper, "May you be safe. May I be safe. May you be calm. May I be calm. May you be at ease. May I be at ease." And you notice the tenderness of that, the quiet fairness of it, not selfishness. Balance. The teacher watches your breathing, and then he offers a Zen story, not to entertain you, but to place a clean truth inside your mind, because truths placed gently become anchors. A student once asked a master, "How can I care for those I love without losing myself in worry?" The master took the student to a garden at night and pointed to a small lantern hanging from a branch. "Do you see the lantern?" he asked. The student nodded. The master said, "This lantern gives light to the path. Does it run down the road to chase every traveler and make sure they do not fall?" The student smiled. "No," he said, "it stays here." The master nodded. "Be like the lantern," he said. "Give light. Stay steady. Do not run after the world in your mind." You feel the meaning immediately. Worry is running after the world in your mind. Loving kindness is being a lantern. Steady warmth, offered without chase. So tonight, you practice being the lantern. You offer the wish. You stay with the breath. You release the outcome. You do not run down the road of imagined disasters. You do not chase tomorrow's unknowns. You remain here in the candlelit temple with the steady flame of your own heart. Now, the teacher gently guides you to widen the practice slightly, because the heart, when it is trained, becomes more spacious, and spaciousness is one of the antidotes to anxiety. Anxiety feels like a narrow tunnel. Spaciousness feels like open sky. Now, he says, choose a small group, 2 or 3 people who are part of your life in a gentle way, not people who overwhelm you, just the simple circle of your human world. You let them appear softly, like silhouettes near candlelight. You do not need faces in detail. You do not need stories. You only need the feeling of humanity, the sense that life is shared. On the long exhale, you whisper, "May you all be safe. May you all be calm. May you all be at ease." You repeat it slowly, and you notice how the heart responds. Sometimes it warms. Sometimes it tightens. Sometimes it feels numb. If it warms, you receive the warmth. If it tightens, you soften the body and let the breath be long. If it feels numb, you do not judge it. Numbness is not failure. Numbness is a sign of tiredness, a sign that the heart has been protected for a long time. The teacher knows this, so he speaks softly. Do not demand that your heart feel a certain way, he says. Offer the phrases as seeds. Seeds do not bloom immediately. They still work in the soil. This sentence is for the anxious mind that wants proof. You do not need proof tonight. You need practice. Then, because the night is for rest, the teacher begins to guide the practice towards sleep. He knows that if you widen too far, the mind may wake up and start thinking about the whole world, start carrying everyone's pain. So he brings you back to the simplest circle again. You and one easy person, like 2 candles, like 2 steady flames. He asks you to return to the breath, to feel the exhale lengthening, to feel the body heavy, to let the muscles around the eyes soften, to let the forehead smooth, to let the tongue rest, because these small releases tell the nervous system, you are not being chased. And then he offers you a quiet verse to seal the night, a verse meant to be repeated once or twice, not to excite the mind, only to slow it down. Warm light, slow breath, open hands, no chase. I wish you well, and I rest in peace. You let the words settle, and you allow silence to come between them, because silence is also part of the practice, and in the silence you notice the river-like rhythm of the breath, the way it comes and goes without needing permission, the way it continues even when the mind forgets, and you begin to understand. The heart can be trained to rest, just as the mind can be trained to return. The teacher speaks one last time, quietly, as if he is speaking directly into the place where anxiety usually hides. If you love someone, he says, do not torture yourself with worry and call it love. Offer kindness, offer presence, offer what you can do in daylight, and at night, rest. Your rest is also part of your care. You breathe out slowly, and you feel the permission of it. Rest is part of care. Rest is not abandonment. Rest is the lantern staying steady so it can give light again tomorrow. So you offer the phrases one more time, softly, as if laying them like a warm cloth over the mind. May you be safe. May you be calm. May you be at ease. And then you bring it home, because the practice must always come home if it is to heal you. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. And as you repeat the last phrase with a long, warm exhale, you feel the body sinking more deeply into stillness. You feel the mind loosening its grip on control. You feel the heart becoming a little wider, a little kinder, a little more like candlelight than like a storm. And the temple around you remains quiet and dim, holding you, while sleep approaches not as something you force, but as something you allow. The natural result of a heart that has stopped chasing the world and has begun, gently, to rest. On the fifth night, the temple receives you the way a quiet shore receives a tired traveler, without questions, without judgment, with a darkness that feels like shelter instead of threat. The candles are placed low along the floor, their flames small and warm, and the air is cool enough to slow your breathing without effort. The teacher sits in the center as before, Buddha as a human monk, eyes closed, face calm, posture steady, as if he has already made peace with everything that tries to hurry the mind. You sit down and let your body remember what matters first. You soften the jaw, because the jaw holds the day's arguments, even when you never spoke them out loud. You soften the shoulders, because the shoulders carry invisible expectations. You soften the belly, because the belly keeps silent alarms. And you lengthen the exhale, slow and warm, as if each breath is gently closing the door on noise. In the first nights, the practice was about beginning again with kindness, about turning regret into wisdom, about planting one small seed instead of demanding a whole forest. Tonight, the teacher brings you to a deeper place, because there is a kind of anxiety that does not come from chaos alone, but from love itself, love that is afraid. When the heart touches something precious, the mind often whispers, almost instantly, "Don't lose this." And the whisper becomes a habit. It becomes checking. It becomes gripping. It becomes rehearsing endings in advance, as if imagining pain could prevent pain. It becomes clinging. And clinging feels like love, because it comes from care. But it is love mixed with fear, and fear cannot rest. The teacher speaks softly, so softly it feels like candlelight on skin. Loving kindness, he says, is warm hands, not clenched fists. You feel the difference in your own body. Warm hands are open. Warm hands can touch and release. Warm hands can offer comfort without trapping. But clenched fists are tight. Clenched fists cannot receive. Clenched fists cannot rest. and an anxious mind is often a fist around life, gripping the river as if gripping could stop the water from flowing. He does not shame you for gripping. He respects the instinct because it was born from care. But he shows you the cost. When you cling, he says, you suffer twice. You suffer because life changes, and you suffer because you refuse to let it change. You breathe out slowly and recognize how often you have refused change in the secret ways of the mind. You have tried to keep a relationship the same by worrying about it. You have tried to keep your own image safe by rehearsing what people might think. You have tried to keep the future from arriving by building 1,000 plans, and the fight has exhausted you. So tonight, the practice is release, but not the cold release of indifference. Tonight is the release that protects love from becoming fear. Tonight is learning to care without clinging. The teacher asks you to bring to mind something you love, not the sharpest longing, not the most complicated person, not the most painful story. Something simple that makes your chest soften, a person who has been kind, a place that feels safe, a memory that carries warmth. Let it appear softly, like a candle seen through mist, not bright, not vivid, just present. As soon as you touch this warmth, the anxious mind may rush in with its familiar questions. What if it ends? What if it changes? What if I lose it? What if I'm not enough to keep it? The teacher hears the rush and guides you with a calm boundary. First, he says, feel gratitude. Then, release the demand. Gratitude is the heart recognizing that something good exists now. Release is the heart letting go of the fantasy that you can freeze the moment forever. The two together create a love that is steady, not panicked. So on a long exhale, you whisper inwardly, very simply, thank you. Thank you for this warmth. Thank you for this kindness. Thank you for this moment. You do not need dramatic emotion. You only need sincerity. Then the teacher introduces a truth that sounds heavy at first, but is actually a doorway to freedom. Everything that is born will change, he says. Everything that changes will pass, and still, your heart can remain kind. He does not say this to make you cold. He says it to make you honest. Because a mind that accepts impermanence stops demanding the impossible, and when you stop demanding the impossible, you stop crushing yourself with anxiety. He tells you a Zen story, slow and clear. A monk once carried a simple bowl given to him by his teacher. The bowl was not expensive, but it represented trust and belonging, so the monk guarded it with great care. Each morning, he washed it carefully. Each evening, he placed it in the same safe spot. Over time, he began to fear losing it so much that he could not sleep. His mind kept circling the bowl, imagining it breaking, imagining it being stolen, imagining the moment he would regret not protecting it more. Finally, he went to his teacher and confessed, "Master, I love this bowl, but my love has become fear." The teacher listened, then took the bowl gently in his hands and held it in the candlelight. "How do you hold it?" he asked. "Carefully," the monk replied, "so it won't fall." The teacher nodded. "And when you are not holding it?" "I still hold it," the monk admitted, "in my mind." The teacher looked at him and said very simply, "This bowl is already broken." The monk's heart jumped. "But it is whole," he protested. "In this moment, yes," the teacher said, "and one day it will break. If you remember that, you will wash it with gratitude instead of fear. You will use it with care instead of panic. And when the day comes, you will grieve, and you will release, without being shocked by reality." The monk stood silent, because he understood. The teacher was not wishing loss. He was teaching freedom from clinging. Tonight, you do not repeat the teacher's words to scare yourself. You repeat them to open your hands. This moment is precious. That is why you meet it with gratitude. And this moment will change. That is why you stop squeezing it. Now the teacher guides you into a practice that blends loving kindness with release. He asks you to rest your hands with palms open, even slightly, because the body learns through symbols. Open hands tell the nervous system, we are not gripping tonight. On the long exhale, you whisper 3 phrases, simple enough to remember, strong enough to reshape the night. May I love without clinging. May I care without fear. May I be at ease with change. Repeat them slowly. Do not force emotion. Let the words be a direction, like a lantern turned toward a calmer path. If sadness rises, you let it rise. If tenderness rises, you let it rise. If the mind says, change hurts, you do not argue. You acknowledge, yes, change can hurt. And you remember the boundary the teacher offers with compassion. Tonight, he says, we do not grieve what has not happened. Worry is often grief in advance, but grief in advance does not protect you. It only drains you. So when the mind begins to rehearse endings, you return to what is real. The breath, the body, the candlelight, the softness of this moment. The teacher gives you a simple method for turning clinging into calm care. He calls it the 3 gentle movements. First, appreciation. Whisper, I am grateful. Second, presence. Whisper, I am here. Third, release. Whisper, I let life move. You try it once, slowly, with a long exhale under each phrase. You feel how it changes the body. Appreciation warms the chest. Presence steadies the breath. Release softens the jaw. The anxious mind loses a little fuel because it is no longer being fed by the demand to control. The teacher explains that equanimity is not distance. It is the calm strength that allows love to stay bright without turning into panic. If you try to protect what you love by worrying, he says, your worry becomes a second fire on top of the first, and soon there is too much heat to sleep. He pauses, and the room feels even quieter, as if the silence itself is listening. But if you protect what you love with steadiness, he continues, your love becomes a lamp, not a wildfire. He invites you to test this in your own heart. Bring to mind the person you chose, the one whose presence is easy. Hold their image softly, and notice the old impulse to grip, the urge to plan for them, to fix them, to prevent every possible problem, to carry their path on your shoulders. Then, with one long exhale, let that impulse loosen. Now offer them loving kindness with open hands. Let the phrases be warm, and let them be free. May you be safe. May you be calm. May you be at ease. Then add a quiet line of release, not cold, not indifferent, simply honest. I care for you, and I release you to life. Repeat the 3 wishes again, and each time you speak them, feel your palms opening a little more, as if the body is learning what the mind has forgotten. Love does not require a fist. If the mind protests, if I release them, am I abandoning them? The teacher answers with gentle clarity. You can release without abandoning, he says. Release is not turning away. Release is letting go of the fantasy that you can control outcomes. He reminds you that you can still act in daylight. You can still help. You can still speak kindly. You can still show up. But you do not need to chase life through the night in your imagination. He tells a short story to place this understanding deeper. A student once asked a master, "How can I care for those I love without losing myself in worry?" The master led the student into a garden at night and pointed to a lantern hanging from a branch. "Do you see the lantern?" he asked. The student nodded. The master said, "This lantern gives light to the path. Does it run down the road to chase every traveler and make sure they do not stumble?" The student smiled and said, "No, it stays here." The master nodded. "Be like the lantern," he said. "Give light, stay steady. Let each traveler walk their own steps. Your steadiness is the gift." You feel how true this is. Worry is running after the world in your mind. Loving kindness is being a lantern, steady warmth, offered without chase. And because it does not chase, it can keep burning. Because it keeps burning, it can keep giving. Now the teacher gives you a simple breath practice for this kind of love. On the inhale, silently say, "Care." On the exhale, silently say, "Release." Care, release, care, release. And let the rhythm be slow, almost sleepy, like waves that arrive and retreat without effort. If thoughts rise, they can rise inside this rhythm. If feelings rise, they can rise inside this rhythm. You do not have to push anything away. You only have to keep the hands open. Then the teacher asks you to offer loving kindness to the part of you that fears change, because that fear is not your enemy. It is a tired protector. Place a hand lightly over your chest and speak inwardly, as you would to a child who has been holding on too tightly. "I see you. You are trying to protect me." You can rest now, and then, gently, you return to the classic wishes, slow and steady, as if laying a warm cloth over the nervous system. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. The temple remains dim and quiet. The candles continue their soft flicker. The teacher's stillness is a reminder that peace is not found by freezing life, but by meeting life with open hands. Before the night ends, he offers you a short verse, a simple rhythm to carry toward sleep. What comes will come, what goes will go. I breathe, I bless, and let it flow. Repeat it once, maybe twice, and then let it fade into silence. Now return to the long exhale. Let your shoulders sink. Let your hands stay open. If thoughts rise about tomorrow, answer softly, "Not now." If thoughts rise about losing something, answer softly, "Not now." Your fresh start tonight is not a plan. It is a posture, open hands, warm heart, steady breath. So you offer the 3 release phrases one last time, like a candle placed beside the mind. May I love without clinging. May I care without fear. May I be at ease with change. And as you breathe out slowly, the anxious mind becomes softer, because it no longer feels it must squeeze the river to be safe. It begins to understand that safety tonight is not certainty. Safety is kindness. Safety is gratitude. Safety is the long exhale. And in that quiet understanding, sleep approaches the way it always approaches when the fist finally opens, gently, naturally, without force. On the 6th night, the temple feels even more like a sanctuary, not because it has changed, but because you have changed the way you enter it, the way you sit, the way you breathe, the way you stop turning every quiet moment into a place where you must prove something to yourself. The candles still burn low along the floor. The wooden beams still disappear into shadow. The air is still cool and clean, and the teacher still sits in the center, Buddha as a human monk, eyes closed, posture steady, face calm, as if it has learned the art of welcoming what arises without chasing it. You sit down, and before the mind can begin its usual work, you do what you have learned to do first, because it is the foundation of everything else. You soften the jaw, you let the shoulders drop, you soften the belly, and you lengthen the exhale until your body receives the message that it is safe enough, in this moment, to stop bracing. The exhale leaves you slowly, warm and quiet, like a candle's breath, and the temple around you seems to become quieter inside your own chest. The first nights taught you the gentleness of beginning again, the honesty of turning regret into wisdom, the patience of planting one small seed, the warmth of wishing well for someone you love, the freedom of caring without clinging. Tonight, the teacher takes you to a place where many anxious minds struggle in secret because it feels ordinary, and the ordinary is where the deepest habits hide. The way you relate to people who are not close to you, the way you pass strangers as if they are shadows, the way you move through crowds while your mind is locked inside itself, the way you carry anxiety in public, not only because you fear the future, but because you feel alone inside the world. The teacher speaks softly, and his words fall into the room like calm snow. Many people, he says, believe loving kindness is only for those they love, but the heart becomes strong when it learns to be kind without preference. Without preference, the phrase sounds simple, but it touches something deep, because preference is where clinging begins. Preference is where fear begins. Preference is where the mind draws sharp lines. This person is safe. That person is not. This person matters. That person does not. This person is mine. That person is nothing to me. And these lines may feel practical, but they also tighten the heart. And a tightened heart becomes an anxious heart, because a tight heart is always protecting itself, always defending its small circle, always worried about what might enter, what might leave, what might be lost. So tonight, the teacher invites you to widen your practice into a calmer, broader space, a space that reduces the feeling of isolation that feeds so much anxiety. He does not ask you to love the whole world with dramatic emotion. He does not demand impossible tenderness. He asks something far simpler and far more powerful: to recognize the humanity of someone neutral, someone you do not usually think about at all, and to offer them a quiet wish, the way you would place a small candle in a dark place without expecting applause. Choose a neutral person, he says, someone you see in life but do not truly meet. At first, your mind resists because it does not understand why this matters. It thinks kindness must be earned through closeness. It thinks caring must be justified by story. It thinks neutrality is emptiness. But the teacher's calm does not move, and you remember what you have learned. The mind often resists what will free it. So you choose someone simple, a cashier whose face you barely notice, a neighbor you pass without speaking, a person who drives the bus, a worker in a building, someone you see and forget. The teacher asks you to picture them softly, not in sharp detail, not in a way that pulls you into thinking, but as a gentle silhouette in candlelight, a human presence, a life moving through its own days, carrying its own weight. As you hold the image, something subtle happens. The heart realizes how many lives are moving beside you, how many hearts are beating in the dark, how many minds are also anxious, how many people are also trying, how many people are also tired, and the world begins to feel less like a lonely corridor you must walk alone. This, the teacher says, is the end of invisible separation. Separation is a quiet source of anxiety. When you feel alone, the mind becomes a fortress. When the mind becomes a fortress, it watches every shadow. When it watches every shadow, it cannot rest. But when you feel connected, even gently, even in the simplest human way, the fortress loosens its walls. The teacher guides you into the practice with the same slow rhythm you have learned to trust, because speed wakes the mind, but slowness soothes it. On the long exhale, he says, Offer the wish. You breathe out slowly, and inwardly you whisper, as if sending warmth through the air. May you be safe. May you be calm. May you be at ease. You do not expect a feeling. You do not demand emotion. You offer the phrases as seeds. You repeat them again, slowly, with the breath like a river that does not rush. May you be safe. May you be calm. May you be at ease. And then the teacher says something that changes the meaning of neutrality. Neutral does not mean empty, he says. Neutral means unknown, and what is unknown is still human. Unknown is still human. You feel that sentence land in you quietly, because you realize how often anxiety narrows your attention so much that the rest of the world becomes blur, and inside that blur, you feel exposed and alone. But when you gently acknowledge the humanity around you, the world becomes less threatening. Faces become less like judgment. Crowds become less like pressure. Life becomes less like an examination room. The teacher invites you to notice what the mind does next, because the anxious mind loves to interfere with warmth by turning it into something complicated. It may say, "This is pointless." It may say, "I don't feel anything." It may say, "Why should I care about strangers?" It may even say, "If I open my heart, I will be hurt." These thoughts are not proof of truth. They are habits of protection. So the teacher offers a gentle correction. Do not measure this practice by feeling, he says. Measure it by direction. Direction again. The same deep teaching. The heart is being trained. A trained heart is not dramatic. A trained heart is steady. And steadiness is what calms anxiety, because anxiety is not only fear. Anxiety is also a system that has forgotten steadiness. He tells you a quiet Zen story, simple enough to remember even when you are sleepy. A student once asked a master, "How can I stop feeling trapped inside my own mind?" The master took the student to a small bridge in the village. People crossed the bridge all day, workers, elders, children, travelers, and the student watched them pass like a stream of bodies. The master asked, "How many of these people are thinking about you?" The student said, "Probably none." The master nodded. "Then why do you live as if the whole world is staring at you?" The student fell silent. The master continued, "Each person carries a whole life inside them. When you remember that, your fear of being judged becomes smaller, and your heart becomes wider." Then the master added, "Practice seeing others as lives, not as mirrors." Lives, not mirrors. You realize how much anxiety comes from treating other people as mirrors, as judgments, as threats to your image, as audiences that might approve or reject you. But when you see them as lives, you stop performing. You stop bracing. You stop imagining that every glance is a verdict. And the nervous system relaxes because it no longer believes it must act perfectly to survive. So tonight, the neutral person becomes your teacher, not because they are special, but because they are ordinary, and the ordinary is where your heart learns to stay open without clinging, without fear, without the drama of preference. The teacher invites you to widen the circle just a little more because you are learning to expand in calm steps. Now include many neutral beings, he says, not as a crowd you must carry, as a simple field of humanity. You imagine softly people you passed today, faces you barely remember, silhouettes moving through streets, lights in windows, quiet lives unfolding in rooms you will never enter. You do not need details. Details wake the mind. You only need the sense of shared existence. On the long exhale you whisper, "May you all be safe. May you all be calm. May you all be at ease." As you repeat it, something in you loosens, because the heart's warmth becomes less personal and more spacious, like a lantern that does not choose only one corner of a room to illuminate. And in that spaciousness, the anxious mind begins to lose its tight grip, because it is difficult for fear to dominate a heart that has become wide and calm. But the teacher is careful. He knows that the heart can become overwhelmed if you widen too fast, because the anxious mind will turn compassion into burden, will turn kindness into responsibility, will try to carry the suffering of the whole world. So he teaches you the difference between compassion and carrying. Compassion is warmth, he says. Carrying is weight. Do not confuse them. Warmth can be offered without breaking your back. Warmth can be offered without taking the world onto your shoulders. Warmth can be offered with open hands. So if you feel heaviness, if you feel pressure, if you feel sadness rising too much, you return to the simplest circle again. You and your breath, you and your candlelight, you and the gentle wish. He guides you back gently, the way you would guide a child back from the edge of rushing water. Return to one breath, he says. Return to one softening. You soften the jaw. You lengthen the exhale. The body settles. Then he asks you to include yourself again, because balance is the foundation of a calm life, and a calm life is the soil where a fresh start grows. Do not give kindness away and leave yourself hungry, he says. Include yourself inside the circle. So you whisper, slow and steady, may I be safe, may I be calm, may I be at ease. Then, gently, you connect the two, yourself and the neutral beings, not in a dramatic story, but in a shared wish. May we be safe, may we be calm, may we be at ease. The word we is small, but it is powerful. It dissolves a certain loneliness. It loosens the tight sense that you are the only one struggling, the only one afraid, the only one unsure. You begin to understand that anxiety is not a personal defect. Anxiety is a human pattern, a nervous system pattern, a shared condition. And when you see it as shared, shame becomes smaller, because shame needs the illusion that you are uniquely broken. The teacher speaks again, and his words are like a slow bell. Your fresh start, he says, is not only what you accomplish, it is what you become willing to wish for others without fear. This is how the year becomes gentler, not through grand vows that collapse under pressure, but through small shifts of heart that change how you walk through the world. If you can wish peace for a stranger, you can stop treating the world like an enemy. If you can wish peace for a neutral being, you can stop living as if every encounter is a test. If you can see people as lives, not as mirrors, you can breathe more freely. And a mind that breathes freely sleeps more easily. Now the teacher gives you a quiet practice for daytime that you will not do now, because now is night. But he plants it as a seed for later. He calls it the silent blessing. When you see someone neutral, he says, do not stare, do not perform. Simply offer one silent line and move on. May you be at ease. Just one line. Just a small candle lit inside your own mind. No one needs to know. No one needs to reward you. It is not for them only. It is for your heart. Because each silent blessing weakens the habit of inner isolation, and inner isolation feeds anxiety. Then he guides you again into a short verse, like a small hymn for the sleepy mind, something ancient in its simplicity, something you can repeat without effort. One breath, one light, one human face. I wish you well, and soften in place. You repeat it once, maybe twice, and then you let it fade, because night is for fading. Night is for slowing. Night is for the quiet work of restoration. The teacher returns to silence for a moment, and in that silence you notice how the practice has changed the quality of your inner space. The mind feels less like a locked room and more like a dim temple with open doors. Thoughts may still come, but they feel less sharp because the heart is less clenched. The body feels heavier because it is no longer bracing for invisible judgment. If the mind tries to pull you back into planning, you whisper, "Not now." If the mind tries to pull you back into worry, you whisper, "Not now." You return to the long exhale. You return to the warmth of candlelight. You return to the steady posture of open hands. Before you let the night carry you further, the teacher offers one final teaching for this sixth night, a teaching that ties the whole practice together and makes it practical for the anxious mind. When you feel anxious among people, he says, your mind shrinks the world into a spotlight and places you under it. Loving kindness turns the spotlight into a lantern that lights the path for everyone. You feel the difference immediately. Spotlight is pressure. Lantern is guidance. Spotlight is performance. Lantern is presence. Spotlight demands perfection. Lantern offers warmth, and you can choose lantern again and again in small, quiet ways. So you offer the wishes once more, slowly, as if closing the temple doors gently, not with force, but with care. May the neutral beings in my life be safe. May they be calm. May they be at ease. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. May we be safe. May we be calm. May we be at ease. And then you stop speaking inside. You let words dissolve. You let the breath remain. You let the candles flicker. You let your body become heavy. You let your face soften. You let your hands stay open. The fresh start continues, not as a loud announcement, not as a promise shouted into the future, but as a quiet widening of the heart that makes the mind less afraid to rest. And as the heart widens, the anxious mind loses its urgency, because it no longer feels trapped alone inside itself. And in that gentle, spacious warmth, sleep approaches the way it approaches a calm temple, softly, naturally, without struggle, like a long exhale finally becoming silence. On the seventh night, you come into the candlelit temple carrying a different kind of weight, not the obvious weight of unfinished tasks or restless thoughts, but the quieter weight that lives in the chest when you remember someone who hurt you, someone who disappointed you, someone whose presence still tightens your body, even if they are far away. Because the nervous system remembers what the mind tries to forget, and the heart remembers what it tried to survive. The candles still burn low along the floor, their light warm and dim. The shadows still gather gently in the corners. The air still feels cool and clean, and the teacher still sits in the center, Buddha as a human monk, eyes closed, posture steady, face calm, as if it has made room for everything that rises and falls. You sit down, and you begin as you always begin now, because this is how you teach the mind that it is safe enough to soften. You loosen the jaw, you let the shoulders drop, you soften the belly, and you lengthen the exhale until it feels like the body is slowly releasing a rope it has been pulling all day. Tonight, the teacher speaks about loving kindness for a difficult person, and even hearing that phrase can make your mind tense, because the anxious mind often misunderstands loving kindness, and it fears that kindness will make you weak, that kindness will force you to accept what should not be accepted, that kindness will erase boundaries, that kindness will mean you must pretend you are not hurt, that kindness will mean you must invite pain back into your life. But the teacher's calm is steady, and he does not ask you for anything foolish, and he does not ask you to betray yourself. because wisdom is never asking you to walk back into fire. Loving kindness, he says, is not agreement. It is not surrender. It is not forgetting. Loving kindness is the decision to stop poisoning your own heart. You breathe out slowly because you understand exactly what he means, even if your mind wants to argue, because you know what it feels like to carry resentment like a hot stone in the chest, to replay old scenes and feel the heat rise again, to tighten your jaw and your shoulders and your belly as if your body is preparing for the same moment to happen again. And you know how exhausting it is, because resentment is not only anger, it is also vigilance, and vigilance does not sleep easily. The teacher continues, and his voice is gentle enough to hold the sensitivity of this night. You do not practice loving kindness for the difficult person because they deserve a reward, he says. You practice because you deserve peace. This is the key that unlocks the whole door. The practice is not a gift you must give to someone who harmed you. It is medicine you give to your own nervous system. It is the moment you stop using your life force to keep a wound bleeding. But the teacher is careful. He knows that some wounds are deep, and if you go too quickly, the mind will rebel, and rebellion will turn the practice into another reason for shame. So he guides you step by step in a way that protects your sleep. First, he says, we establish safety inside you. We do not begin with the difficult person. We begin with the ground. So you return to the simplest reality. You feel the floor beneath you. You feel your body's weight. You feel the cool air entering your nostrils. You feel the warm air leaving on the exhale. You soften one place more. Your hands rest open, not clenched, because open hands tell the nervous system that the fight is not happening right now. Then the teacher asks you to offer loving kindness to yourself, because if you try to offer warmth outward while you are still starving inward, the heart will collapse into fatigue. On the long exhale, you whisper inwardly, slow and steady, "May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease." You repeat it once more, and each repetition is not a spell, it is a direction, like turning a lantern toward the path. Then the teacher offers a boundary phrase, and this is important tonight, because boundaries are part of wisdom. He says, add one more line, a line that reminds your body you are not abandoning yourself. So you whisper, on the exhale, "May I be protected. May I be guided by wisdom." Protected, guided by wisdom. The body listens, because the body has been afraid that kindness means leaving yourself unguarded. But wisdom kindness includes protection. Only when you feel a little steadier does the teacher invite you to bring a difficult person to mind. And even then, he tells you to do it softly, as if you are looking at a figure across a river in moonlight, not close enough to touch, not close enough to overwhelm you, just far enough to see without drowning. Choose someone mildly difficult, he says, not the most painful one, not the person who feels like an open wound. Choose someone whose memory is uncomfortable, but not unbearable. You listen to your own nervous system, because the teacher has taught you to respect it, and you choose a person who fits that description. You let the image appear with gentle distance, and immediately you notice how the body reacts, because the body always reacts first. A tightening in the chest, a contraction in the throat, a hardening in the belly, a subtle clench in the hands. This is the nervous system remembering. This is the old alarm trying to protect you. The teacher does not ask you to push the reaction away. He asks you to soften around it. Let the tension be there, he says, and make space around it. You widen your attention like a sky around a cloud. The cloud remains, but the sky is larger. And you keep the exhale long, because the exhale is how you speak safety to the body without words. Then he gives you the simplest instruction for metta toward a difficult person, an instruction so small it feels possible, even when the heart resists. Start with this, he says. Do not try to love them. Do not try to approve. Do not try to feel anything special. Simply recognize that they, too, are a human being who wants to be happy and does not know how to act wisely all the time. This is not excusing harm. This is seeing the cause of harm. And seeing the cause does not mean you invite it back. It means you stop being surprised by it and you stop feeding it with your own inner fire. The teacher says, offer them one neutral wish, the smallest one you can honestly offer. Maybe you cannot say, may you be happy, not yet. That is fine. The practice does not ask you to lie. It asks you to begin where you are. So you choose a wish that is simple and honest, a wish that does not betray you. On the long exhale, you whisper, may you be calm. Just that, calm. Because a calm mind harms less. A calm mind speaks less sharply. A calm mind does not need to dominate to feel safe. May you be calm. You repeat it again, slowly, without forcing emotion. The point is not to manufacture warmth. The point is to stop manufacturing poison. And if your mind protests, why should I wish them anything? The teacher answers without scolding. Because your wish is not a gift that makes them powerful, he says. Your wish is a release that makes you free. Then he offers a Zen story, and it is meant to be heard in the body, not debated in the mind. A student once came to a master and said, I cannot forgive. My anger feels like justice. The master listened, then placed a small cup of tea in the student's hands and asked him to hold it. The tea was hot, and the student held the cup tightly because he didn't want to spill it. The master said, now walk with it. The student walked, trembling, afraid of dropping it. The master asked, how do you feel? The student said, I can't relax. The master nodded. This is your anger, he said. You think you are holding it to keep justice, but it is holding you. And you cannot rest because you refuse to set it down. You understand, because you have felt it. Anger is a cup you keep gripping even when your hands are tired, and the tighter you grip, the more you tremble. And the more you tremble, the more you fear spilling, and the mind becomes tense and sleepless. Setting it down does not mean you approve the past. Setting it down means you stop burning your own hands. So tonight, the teacher gives you permission to set it down for a few breaths, not forever, not dramatically, just for this night, because the night is for healing, and a healed nervous system will make wiser choices in daylight. He asks you to return to your breath and offer 3 phrases, each one designed to protect your heart while loosening the grip of resentment. On the first long exhale, may I be free from hatred. On the second long exhale, may I be free from fear. On the third long exhale, may I rest, free from hatred, free from fear. May I rest. You repeat them slowly, and you feel how the body responds, because the body is tired of being in battle. Then the teacher invites you back to the difficult person again, but he adds the most important part of the practice tonight: boundaries held in kindness. Now, he says, wish them well, and keep your distance where distance is wise. This is the middle way of metta. You can wish someone calm without letting them close. You can wish someone healing without reopening your door. You can release hatred without surrendering discernment. Loving kindness does not cancel wisdom. It is guided by wisdom. So you whisper slowly, may you be calm. May you be guided by wisdom. May you cause no harm. This last phrase matters because it protects your heart. You are not saying, may you come into my life. You are not saying, May you be rewarded. You are saying, may harm end. May the chain of harm stop. That is a deep kind of kindness, a kindness that protects many people, including you. You repeat these phrases again, and as you do, you notice how the difficult person's image begins to soften around the edges, not because the past becomes different, but because your mind is no longer adding fresh fire. The old scene becomes less alive. The body relaxes a fraction. The jaw unclenches a fraction. The shoulders drop a fraction. And that fraction matters, because fractions are how the nervous system heals. The teacher then speaks about forgiveness, but he speaks carefully, because forgiveness is often misunderstood. Forgiveness is not saying it was okay, he says. Forgiveness is saying, I will not continue to bleed for it every night. You breathe out slowly, because you have been bleeding in quiet ways, in the way you replay, in the way you brace, in the way you tense when you remember, in the way you lose sleep, in the way you carry the person inside your body, even when they are not in the room. Forgiveness, in this teaching, is the end of that internal captivity. And to make it practical, the teacher offers you a small ritual for nights, when the mind brings up the difficult person again, a ritual that turns the replay into release. He says, when the memory appears, do 3 things. First, name it, remembering. Second, soften the body, jaw, shoulders, belly. Third, offer one wish. May I be at ease. Then return to breath. You practice it once right now. The image appears. You name, remembering. You soften. You whisper, may I be at ease. You return to breath. And you feel how the mind loses momentum when you stop feeding it with story. Then the teacher invites you to widen the circle in a way that is both compassionate and sleep-friendly, because widening too far can wake the mind, but widening just enough can dissolve the sense of personal battle. He says, consider that many beings carry difficult people inside them. Many beings lie awake with old anger. Many beings rehearse old harm in the dark. You are not alone. So you whisper softly, not as a performance, but as a shared human prayer. May all hearts find calm. May all hatred soften. May all beings rest. Just a few lines, like a candle set in the window. And then you come back to yourself, because the practice ends where sleep can begin. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. The teacher sits in stillness, and his stillness is the final teaching. You do not have to carry the difficult person through the night. You do not have to rehearse the past until it becomes a fresh wound. You can set the cup down. You can open your hands. You can let the nervous system rest. Before silence settles fully, he offers a short verse, quiet and slow, meant to be remembered like a lullaby. I will not grip the flame. I will not feed the fire. I breathe. I bless. I rest and soften my desire. You let the verse fade, and you return to the long exhale, warm and slow, like water leaving a bowl. If the mind tries to argue again, you answer softly, not now. If the mind tries to prove that your anger is necessary, you answer softly, in the morning. Night is not for courtroom speeches. Night is for healing. And as you keep breathing, you begin to feel the difference between being wise and being tense, between holding a boundary and holding a grudge, between caring for your safety and feeding your suffering. Loving kindness, tonight, is not a bright emotion. It is a quiet decision to stop living with clenched fists. So you open your hands, even a little. You soften your jaw, even a little. You let the shoulders sink, even a little. And you offer one last line, not to the difficult person, not to the past, but to your own tired heart, the heart that has been trying to protect you for so long. May I rest. May I be at ease. May I begin again, gently. And in that gentle ending, the anxious mind loses its urgency, because it finally understands that kindness can include boundaries, that release can include wisdom, that peace can exist without pretending, and that you can let the night do what it was always meant to do: carry you softly toward sleep. On the 8th night, the temple feels like a place you could live inside forever, not because it is an escape from life, but because it reminds you what life is supposed to feel like when you stop turning every moment into a trial, when you stop tightening your body against the future, when you stop carrying old scenes like stones pressed into your chest. The candles still burn low. The light still stays gentle and dim. The shadows still gather softly in the corners, and the air is cool enough to slow your thoughts without effort. The teacher sits in the center as always, Buddha as a human monk, eyes closed, posture steady, face calm, not frozen, not distant, simply at peace with what rises and falls. You sit down and begin the way you have learned to begin, because the beginning is the doorway to everything else. You loosen the jaw as if releasing a secret argument you have been holding all day. You let the shoulders drop as if placing a heavy burden on the floor beside you. You soften the belly, because the belly is where the nervous system hides its silent alarms. You lengthen the exhale until it feels like the body is finally hearing the message it has been waiting for. You can stop guarding now. You can stop bracing now. You can rest. Tonight, the teacher speaks about forgiveness, but not the kind of forgiveness that people sometimes use as a weapon. Not forgiveness that forces you to pretend harm did not happen. Not forgiveness that demands you smile while your heart is still bleeding. Tonight, forgiveness is taught as release, as unclenching, as a quiet, wise decision to stop living with the past wrapped around your throat. Tonight, forgiveness is not something you do for someone else's comfort. It is something you do so your own mind can finally stop carrying fire into the night. The teacher's voice is low and gentle, like candlelight moving across wood. There is a difference, he says, between remembering and reliving. You feel that sentence open something inside you because you know how reliving feels. Reliving is when the body tightens as if the moment is happening again. Reliving is when the jaw clenches, the chest hardens, the stomach sinks, and the mind rushes forward to defend itself, to argue, to justify, to prove, to punish, to correct. Reliving is when the past becomes a present danger in the nervous system, even if the room is quiet and safe. Remembering is simply knowing. Remembering is a fact held in the mind without the body becoming a battlefield. You cannot always choose what you remember, the teacher says, but you can learn to stop reliving. You breathe out slowly because you recognize how many nights have been stolen by reliving, how many hours have been spent inside old scenes, how many times you have tried to win a conversation that is already over, how many times you have punished yourself or someone else in your imagination as if punishment could rewrite the past. And the teacher does not shame you for this. He understands it as the nervous system trying to protect you, trying to prepare you, trying to keep you from being surprised again. But preparation has become captivity. Protection has become prison, and the door out of that prison is release. The teacher pauses, and the silence feels like a soft cloth laid across the mind. Then he speaks again. Forgiveness, he says, is not saying, "It was fine." Forgiveness is saying, "I will not keep paying for it in the dark." Paying for it in the dark. You understand immediately. You have paid with sleep. You have paid with peace. You have paid with a body that cannot fully relax. You have paid with a mind that tightens at certain memories, certain faces, certain words. You have paid with the inner habit of bracing, as if bracing could prevent life from changing. Tonight, the teacher offers you a different way. He tells you to begin with safety again, because forgiveness without safety becomes pressure, and pressure never heals. So you return to the ground. You feel the floor supporting you. You feel the weight of your body settling. You feel the cool air entering, the warm air leaving. You let your hands rest open, palms soft, because open hands teach the nervous system what the mind is trying to learn. Then the teacher asks you to choose one small pain, not the largest wound, not the deepest grief, not the memory that overwhelms you. He is careful, because wisdom never forces the heart. Choose one thread, he says, not the whole rope. You choose a thread, a moment you still replay, a small betrayal, a small disappointment, a time you felt unseen, a time you spoke too sharply, a time you were misunderstood, a time you carried something alone, a time you wish had been different. You let the memory appear softly, as if projected onto a wall far away, not inside your body, not close enough to drown you. Immediately, the body may react, because bodies remember. The chest may tighten, the throat may tighten, the belly may contract. The teacher does not ask you to remove the reaction. He asks you to stop adding a second reaction of panic. Feel it, he says, and breathe with it. So you breathe. Slow inhale, long exhale, and you notice something quietly important. The memory is a picture, but the suffering is often the clenching you add when the picture appears. The picture is not the whole pain. The clenching is the new pain, happening now. And because the clenching is happening now, it is something you can soften now. The teacher guides you in a simple rhythm that turns reliving into remembering. Name it, he says, softly. So you name it, not dramatically, not with story, not with blame. You simply whisper inwardly, remembering. Remembering. Naming is powerful because it moves you into awareness. Awareness is wider than emotion. Awareness is the bank of the river. Emotion is the water flowing. Then the teacher asks you to do one physical act of release, small but real. Soften one place, he says. Not everywhere. One place. You soften the jaw, or the shoulders, or the hands, or the belly. One place. And as you soften, the nervous system hears a message. The danger is not here. This is a memory, not an attack. Then the teacher gives you the forgiveness phrase, but he gives it as a release phrase, not as a moral command. He does not tell you to forgive them. He tells you to release your own grip. On the long exhale, you whisper, I release what I cannot change. You repeat it slowly, because repetition is how the nervous system learns. I release what I cannot change. The mind may protest. It may say, if I release it, I will be unprotected. It may say, if I release it, it means it didn't matter. It may say, if I release it, they win. The teacher's calm does not move. Release is not surrender, he says. Release is freedom. Freedom, not approval, not forgetting. Freedom. Then he offers a Zen story, simple and sharp, the kind of story that stays in you, because it does not argue with the mind. It simply shows the mind itself. A traveler once walked through a village carrying a heavy sack on his back. The sack was filled with stones. Some stones were marked with names. Some were marked with events. Some were marked with words spoken long ago. The traveler believed he needed the sack because each stone was proof of what happened, proof that he was right to be guarded, proof that he was right to be angry, proof that he was right to be cautious. He carried it for years, He became strong from the weight, but he also became tired, and his sleep became shallow, because even at night his body felt as if it was still carrying the sack. One evening he sat beside a river and met an old monk. The monk asked, "Why do you carry that?" The traveler said, "So I don't forget, so I don't get fooled again, so I don't become weak." The monk nodded and said, "And how is your rest?" The traveler admitted, "I can't truly rest." The monk pointed to the river and said, "Put one stone down." The traveler hesitated. The monk said, "Not all. One." The traveler put one stone down. The monk said, "How do you feel?" The traveler said, "Lighter." The monk smiled and said, "This is forgiveness, not a speech, not a ceremony. One stone down, then another, when you are ready. You understand, because your heart has been carrying stones. Tonight, you do not throw them violently. You do not deny that they exist. You simply put one down, gently, because you want to sleep. So you return to your chosen memory, the one thread, and you repeat the release phrase again, slowly, on the long exhale. I release what I cannot change. Then the teacher adds another line, because forgiveness without self-compassion becomes pressure again, and pressure will tighten your chest. He says, "Now forgive yourself for carrying it this long." This can be harder than forgiving others, because the mind believes it should have been stronger, should have known better, should have moved on faster. But this belief is another stone. So you soften the body and you whisper a simple self-compassion line. I did what I could with what I knew. You repeat it slowly. I did what I could with what I knew. This does not erase responsibility. It simply ends cruelty. It allows learning without whipping. Then the teacher guides you into a forgiveness practice that is built like a gentle staircase, because the heart opens one step at a time. First, he says, forgive the moment. Not the person, not the whole story. The moment. The moment is already over. The moment cannot be fixed by hatred. So you release the moment. On the long exhale, you whisper, I let that moment be in the past. Then the teacher says, second, forgive the mind. Forgive your mind for reliving. Forgive your mind for trying to protect you. Forgive your mind for not knowing a better way yet. This forgiveness is not praise. It is understanding. On the long exhale, you whisper, my mind was trying to protect me. Then he says, third, choose a new posture. Not a new personality, not a dramatic vow, a posture, open hands, long exhale, quiet return. On the long exhale, you whisper, I choose peace tonight. I choose peace tonight. The sentence is simple, but it changes the body, because the body has been waiting for you to choose it. Now, the teacher is wise, and he knows that some wounds are connected to people you will never receive closure from, people who will never apologize, people who will never understand what they did. The anxious mind keeps reliving partly because it wants closure. It wants the story to end with fairness. It wants the scene to end properly. But life does not always provide that. So the teacher teaches you how to create closure inside yourself, not by pretending, but by releasing the demand. He says, closure is not them changing. Closure is you stopping the argument in your chest. Stopping the argument in your chest. You feel how true that is. The argument is what keeps the nervous system awake. The argument is what keeps the jaw tight. The argument is what keeps the heart burning. So tonight, you practice stopping. When the mind tries to argue, you name it. Arguing, arguing. Then you return to breath. You soften one place. You repeat, I choose peace tonight. This is not weakness. This is strength. It takes strength to stop feeding a fire that feels justified. Then the teacher offers you a set of phrases that are especially sleep-friendly because they do not stir emotion too strongly. They are calm, neutral, wise. They do not demand love, they demand release. On the long exhale, may I be free from the burden of the past. On the long exhale, may my heart be light. On the long exhale, may I rest. You repeat them slowly, free from the burden, heart light, rest. If resistance comes, the teacher does not fight resistance. He invites you to make the practice smaller, because smaller is always how the heart becomes willing. If you cannot forgive, he says, practice willingness. Willingness is a gentle door. You may not be able to say, I forgive, but you can say, I am willing to release some of this. You may not be able to say, I let it go, but you can say, I am willing to loosen my grip tonight. This is enough. Willingness is a seed. So you whisper quietly, I am willing to release a little. You repeat it again. I am willing to release a little. And you notice that even this line softens you, because it ends the internal war where you force yourself to be spiritual on command. Now the teacher brings in loving kindness again, because release without warmth can become cold, and coldness can become another kind of clenching. The heart heals through warmth. So he asks you to place your hand over your chest again and offer yourself the same simple wishes that have been guiding you since the first night. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. Then he adds gently, a forgiveness line that is not a performance, only a quiet blessing for your own nervous system. May I be free. May I be free. Not free from reality, free from the extra suffering, free from the stones, free from reliving. He pauses. The candles flicker. The silence deepens. Then he speaks about the future, but only in a way that supports sleep. He does not tell you to plan. He tells you to trust the path you have been building. If the memory returns tomorrow, he says, you will not panic. You will name it. You will soften. You will choose peace again. This is the practice. One stone down, then another when you are ready. You breathe out slowly and feel something quiet in your chest, a small opening, because you realize forgiveness is not a single act you either succeed at or fail. Forgiveness is a gentle repetition, a habit of release, a way of no longer feeding the fire. Before the night ends, the teacher offers a short verse, slow and simple, meant to be remembered like a lullaby rather than understood like a lecture. I lay down the stone, I loosen my hand, the river keeps moving, and I still can stand. Then he lets the verse fade into silence, because silence is the deepest medicine. Now you return to the breath. Long exhale, soft jaw, heavy shoulders, open hands. If the mind brings the memory again, you do not chase it. You do not fight it. You simply practice the sequence the teacher gave you, as calmly as if you were lighting a candle, remembering, softening. I release what I cannot change. I choose peace tonight. And you repeat it as many times as needed, because repetition is compassion. Repetition is how the nervous system learns. Repetition is how the mind stops treating the past like an emergency. Then you offer the final wishes, quietly, the way you would close the doors of a temple with care. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. May I be free. And in that gentle closing, something inside you finally stops gripping. Not because the past becomes beautiful, but because you stop paying for it in the dark. The body grows heavier. The breath grows slower. The mind grows less sharp. And sleep begins to approach like a soft fog moving through the temple. Not forced, not chased, simply aloud, as your heart learns the deepest fresh start of all. Not a perfect life, but a lighter heart, an open hand, and the quiet courage to release. On the 9th night, you enter the candlelit temple with a kind of quiet courage you did not have at the beginning, because you have already learned something the anxious mind rarely understands at first. That peace does not come from forcing life to behave. Peace comes from learning how to meet life without tightening into a fist. The candles still burn low along the floor. The light still stays warm and dim. The shadows still gather gently in the corners like a protective cloak, and the air is cool enough to slow your breathing without effort. The teacher sits in the center as always, Buddha as a human monk. Eyes closed, face calm, posture steady, as if his stillness is not a performance, but a natural resting state that becomes available when the mind stops demanding control. You sit down, and you begin the way you have learned to begin, because beginning is the anchor that keeps you from being swept away. You soften the jaw, because the jaw holds the day's hidden arguments. You let the shoulders drop, because shoulders carry invisible pressure. You soften the belly, because the belly stores quiet alarm. You lengthen the exhale until it feels like the body is gently turning down a volume knob. Each exhale is slower than the last, warm and quiet, like the breath of a candle leaving the wick. Tonight, the teacher speaks about something so central to freedom that it changes the shape of your whole year. And yet it is also something the anxious mind resists with all its strength, because it believes resistance is safety. Tonight, the teaching is non-attachment, not coldness, not indifference, not distance, but the art of caring without chaining your happiness to outcomes you cannot fully control. The teacher's voice is low and steady, as if he is speaking directly into the nervous system, not into your intellect. The anxious mind, he says, tries to control the river. He pauses, and the silence feels like a soft cloth laid across your thoughts. But a river cannot be controlled, he continues. It can only be met with skill. You feel the truth of this in your body, because you know the hidden exhaustion of trying to control what cannot be controlled. You know how many nights have been stolen by trying to predict every possibility. You know how many mornings have been tight because you rehearsed them in the dark. You know how many decisions have been haunted by the question, what if I choose wrong? You know how often you have tried to grip life so it would not surprise you, so it would not leave you, so it would not change shape. And the grip has not made you safe. It has made you tense. The teacher does not scold you for this. He respects the instinct. He understands that control often begins as protection, but he also shows you gently the cost. When you grip, he says, you suffer before anything even happens. You suffer while waiting. You suffer while imagining. You suffer while planning. You suffer while checking. And even if the outcome is good, you are too tired to receive it. Too tired to receive it. This sentence lands quietly, because you realize how often you have arrived at good moments exhausted, how often you have reached a goal and immediately turned it into another task, how often you have been given love and still braced for loss, how often you have been safe and still scanned for danger, because the habit of control does not turn off simply because life is calm. Control becomes a posture. And tonight, the teacher is offering you a new posture. Open hands. He asks you to rest your hands with palms slightly open, even if only a little, because the body is a teacher, and the body can learn non-attachment before the mind agrees. Open palms, soft fingers, no fist, no gripping. This is not symbolic decoration. It is nervous system training. The body hears the message. We are not wrestling tonight. Then the teacher asks you to bring to mind one desire, one goal, one outcome you have been clinging to, not necessarily something huge, not something that overwhelms you, but something real enough to tighten the chest. Maybe it is a plan for the year. Maybe it is a hope in a relationship. Maybe it is a fear about work. Maybe it is a need to be seen a certain way. Maybe it is a wish for certainty. Let it appear softly, like a shape in candlelight, not bright, not dramatic, just present. As soon as it appears, notice the body. The chest may tighten, the throat may tighten, the jaw may harden, the belly may contract. This is attachment showing itself not as philosophy, but as sensation. The teacher does not ask you to erase the sensation. He asks you to breathe with it and soften around it, because softening around it is how you stop feeding it with panic. Attachment, he says, is not only wanting. Attachment is believing you cannot be at peace without getting what you want. This is where the anxious mind becomes restless, because it recognizes itself. The anxious mind often believes peace is conditional. Peace will come when the problem is solved. Peace will come when the person replies. Peace will come when the plan is certain. Peace will come when the year is secure. Peace will come when the outcome is guaranteed. But if peace is always waiting for a guarantee, peace never comes, because life does not give guarantees the way the anxious mind demands. So tonight, the teacher offers a deeper, kinder truth. You can care and still be free. He guides you into a practice that is simple enough to do in the middle of the night, because simplicity is what the sleepy mind can carry. He calls it the two hands practice. In one hand, he says, hold your intention. Intention is what you can choose. Intention is your direction. Intention is the seed you plant. In the other hand, he says, hold release. Release is your willingness to let the outcome unfold beyond your control. Release is your freedom from demanding life obey. You breathe out slowly and feel the difference. Intention feels like steadiness. Release feels like softness. Together, they form wisdom. The teacher gives you the phrases to match the two hands, and he asks you to place them on the breath, because breath is the bridge between mind and body. On the inhale, silently say, I choose my direction. On the exhale, silently say, I release the outcome. Again, slowly. Inhale, I choose my direction. Exhale, I release the outcome. You repeat it, and with each repetition, you feel the body loosen a fraction because the nervous system is hearing a new message. You are not helpless, but you are also not required to control everything. You can act where you can act. You can let go where you cannot act. This is the middle way of effort. Then the teacher speaks about effort, because effort is often where anxiety hides. Some people confuse non-attachment with doing nothing, and some people confuse attachment with responsibility, and the teacher wants you to see clearly. Right effort, he says, is not strain. He pauses, and his voice remains calm. Right effort is steady, gentle, consistent. Strain is fear pretending to be discipline. You feel how true that is. Strain tastes sharp. It feels tight in the chest. It makes the breath shallow. It makes the mind impatient. It makes you harsh with yourself. But steady effort feels different. It feels like a slow river carving a new path without shouting. It feels like returning again and again without drama. So tonight, the teacher invites you to soften your relationship with effort. Instead of asking, how do I force my year to go right? He invites you to ask, how do I show up wisely and then let life move? This is the heart of non-attachment. Show up, then release. To place this teaching deeper, he tells you a Zen story, and the story is simple. but it feels like a mirror held gently to the anxious mind. A student once came to a master and said, "I want peace, but my mind keeps trying to arrange everything." The master led the student to a small garden at night, where moonlight fell softly on a bowl of water placed on a stone. The master said, "Look into the water." The student looked and saw the moon reflected. Then a breeze passed, and the water rippled, and the moon's reflection broke into fragments. The student said, "The moon is gone." The master smiled. "Is the moon gone?" he asked. The student looked up and saw the moon still shining above. The master said, "Your mind is the bowl. When it shakes, the reflection shakes, but the moon does not change." The student frowned. "What should I do?" he asked. The master said, "Stop trying to hold the moon inside the bowl. Let the bowl be still, and the reflection will return." You understand? You have been trying to hold the moon inside the bowl. You have been trying to trap life inside your plans, your worries, your predictions. You have been trying to guarantee a reflection. But peace is not found by trapping the moon. Peace is found by letting the bowl become still. So tonight, the teacher guides you towards stillness through equanimity, the calm strength that can hold pleasant and unpleasant without collapsing into craving or resistance. Equanimity is not numbness. Equanimity is balance. It is the heart learning to stay open even when the river changes speed. He asks you to remember, everything is changing, not as a threat, as a fact. And when the heart accepts the fact of change, it stops demanding that life stay frozen. This is when the nervous system begins to relax. He offers you a phrase that is ancient in spirit, simple in sound, and powerful in effect when repeated with a long exhale. Like this, he says. On the exhale, whisper, "This too changes." This too changes, not as despair, as release. You repeat it slowly. This too changes. You feel how the phrase opens the fist, because the fist cannot hold the river anyway. You feel how the phrase softens the jaw, because the jaw was clenching against reality. You feel how the phrase quiets the mind, because the mind was arguing with impermanence. The teacher then adds a second phrase, because non-attachment is not only acceptance of change, it is also trust in your ability to meet change. On the exhale, whisper, "And I can meet it." This too changes, and I can meet it. You repeat the pair slowly, letting the breath be long and warm. This too changes, and I can meet it. Now the anxious mind may try to turn this into a test. It may say, "What if I can't?" It may say, "What if it's too much?" It may say, "What if I break?" The teacher does not argue with fear. He offers a gentler truth. You do not have to meet the whole future, he says. You only have to meet this breath, and then the next. That is how you meet life, one breath at a time, not by swallowing the entire year at midnight. He invites you to return to your chosen desire, your chosen outcome, and to practice holding it with open hands, not pushing it away, not pretending it doesn't matter, but changing your relationship to it. He asks you to speak 3 lines, lines that keep intention while releasing attachment. First line, on the inhale, I care. Second line, on the exhale, I release. Third line, on the next exhale, I return. I care. I release. I return. Care keeps you human. Release keeps you free. Return keeps you present. You repeat it, and you notice the shift. Your desire becomes less like a chain and more like a direction. And this is how a fresh start becomes stable. Not by controlling outcomes, but by choosing direction with a soft heart. The teacher then speaks about happiness, because so much anxiety comes from the hidden belief that happiness is an object you must catch. And when you chase happiness like an object, you create fear of losing it, because objects can be stolen. But the Buddha's wisdom points to a different kind of happiness. Happiness as a quality of mind, cultivated by clarity, kindness, and non-attachment. When you stop demanding, he says, you start receiving. Receiving does not mean life becomes perfect. It means you can feel the small goodness that is already here, the warmth of the candlelight, the weight of your body on the ground, the quiet of the room, the slow breath leaving you, the simple fact that in this moment you are safe enough to soften. These are small receives, but small receives repeated become a new life. The teacher guides you into loving kindness again, because non-attachment without kindness can turn into cold detachment, and cold detachment is just another kind of fist. So he asks you to offer metta to yourself, not as reward, but as nourishment. On the long exhale, you whisper, "May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease." Then he adds a line that ties loving kindness to non-attachment, a line that teaches the heart to be warm without gripping. May my love be free. May my heart be steady. Free love. Steady heart. This is the mature kind of kindness, warm, open, and not chained to outcomes. The teacher then offers you a practice for the moments when anxiety rises because you want something to go a certain way. He calls it the 4 questions of release, not questions you must answer with 1,000 thoughts, but questions you answer with a calm breath and a simple truth. First, is this within my control? Second, is this within my influence? Third, is this beyond me? Fourth, what is the kindest next step? He teaches you that if something is within your control, you act gently in daylight. If it is within your influence, you take one small step with patience. If it is beyond you, you release it with wisdom, because carrying it at night will not change it. And the kindest next step is often breathe, soften, return. He does not ask you to do all of this now. Now is night. Now is for rest. He is planting the seed for tomorrow, because a fresh start is built from seeds placed gently. Then, as the candles flicker and the air remains cool, the teacher offers a short verse, the kind that can sink into the mind without waking it up, the kind that can be repeated like a slow lullaby. I choose my way, I do my part, then I let go, with open heart. You repeat it softly, and the words feel like a hand loosening around your chest. Now bring your attention back to the breath again. Let the exhale be longer. Let the shoulders sink lower. Let the jaw soften more. Let your hands remain open. If thoughts come, let them come. If plans come, let them come. But do not grip them. Let them pass like leaves on the river. You are not required to solve the year in the dark. If the mind tries to bargain, if I worry enough, I can prevent pain. Answer with the teacher's calm truth. Worry is not protection. Worry is suffering in advance. Then return to the simple practice. I choose my direction. I release the outcome. And as you continue, you begin to feel something subtle, something the anxious mind rarely allows. Relief that does not depend on certainty. Relief that comes from letting the bowl become still. Relief that comes from opening the fist. Relief that comes from realizing you can care deeply and still be free. The teacher speaks one last time, quietly, as if his words are meant to be carried by the breath into sleep. Your fresh start, he says, is not a perfect year. Your fresh start is a freer heart. A freer heart. Not a heart that gets everything it wants. A heart that stops chaining peace to outcomes. A heart that learns to act where it can act and release where it cannot. A heart that remains kind, a heart that remains steady. So you offer the final wishes of the night, not as a demand, but as a gentle blessing laid over the nervous system like a warm cloth. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. May my love be free. May my heart be steady. And then you stop speaking inside. You let words dissolve. You let the breath remain. You let the candles flicker. You let the bowl of your mind become still. The river will move whether you grip it or not. The moon will shine whether you trap it or not. Life will change whether you argue with it or not. And tonight, for the first time in a long time, you choose the path that leads to rest. You open your hands, you soften your jaw, you lengthen your exhale, and you allow sleep to approach naturally, like the calm return of the moon's reflection on still water, quiet and whole, not forced, not chased, simply allowed. On the 10th night, you enter the candle-lit temple with a mind that is quieter in one way and restless in another, because as soon as the heart begins to taste peace, the mind begins to wonder how to carry that peace into daylight, how to keep it from leaking away the moment you open your phone, the moment you speak to people, the moment you step back into responsibilities, because the anxious mind fears that calm is fragile, that peace is something you only get to borrow at night and then lose again in the morning. The candles still burn low along the floor, their light warm and dim. The shadows still gather softly like a cloak, and the cool air still slows the breath. The teacher sits in the center as always, Buddha as a human monk, eyes closed, posture steady, face calm, and you sit down and begin in the way you have learned to begin, because beginning is a ritual that teaches your nervous system safety. You soften the jaw as if letting go of a hidden argument. You let the shoulders drop as if placing the day's burden on the floor beside you. You soften the belly because the belly holds the silent alarms, and you lengthen the exhale until it feels like your body is gently turning down the volume of everything. Tonight, the teacher speaks about the bridge between inner peace and outer life, and he speaks in a way that is practical without becoming harsh, because wisdom is never a whip. If you want a fresh start, he says, do not only train the mind in silence, train your life in small actions. He pauses, and the pause itself feels like a teaching, because it gives your mind space to receive instead of defend. Peace, he continues, is not only a feeling. Peace is also a way of moving. A way of moving. You feel how important that is, because so much anxiety comes from the gap between what you know in your quiet moments and what you do when you feel pressure. You can understand kindness at night and still speak sharply in the morning. You can understand non-attachment at night and still cling in daytime. You can understand loving kindness and still judge yourself when you fail. The teacher is not blaming you for this. He is simply showing you that the fresh start becomes real when the mind and the life begin to walk in the same direction. He looks calm, but his calm is not passive. It is alive. It is steady effort without strain, and he wants you to learn that same steadiness. Tonight, he says, we will practice the simplest kind of wisdom, the kind you can carry into speech and action. The word speech lands in you because you know how much anxiety lives in what you say and what you wish you had said, how much suffering is created by a single sentence spoken in haste, how many nights are stolen by replaying conversations, by rewriting messages, by imagining what others think, by fearing judgment. Speech is one of the fastest ways to create a storm in the mind, because words do not disappear when they leave the mouth. They echo inside you, sometimes for years. The teacher speaks softly, but his softness has clarity. Before you speak, he says, ask 3 questions. He does not ask you to become perfect. He does not ask you to become silent forever. He asks you to become mindful, because mindfulness is the beginning of freedom. First, he says, is it true? Not perfectly true, not absolute truth, but honest. Honest, not exaggerated, not twisted by fear, not shaped only to protect your image. Second, he says, is it necessary? Because many words are only smoke. They fill the air, but they do not feed life. Many words are anxiety trying to relieve itself by spilling into someone else. Third, he says, is it kind? And kindness here does not mean sweet performance. Kindness means your words do not harm unnecessarily. Kindness means your words do not throw fire into your own nervous system and then call it communication. You breathe out slowly because you realize how many anxious moments begin with speech that is not guided by these questions. You speak quickly to reduce discomfort. You explain too much to avoid being misunderstood. You defend yourself before anyone attacks. You attack first because you fear being hurt. You promise too much because you fear losing love. You apologize too much because you fear being rejected. Anxiety speaks. Anxiety texts. Anxiety performs. And then anxiety lies awake replaying. So tonight, the teacher offers you a fresh start that is very simple. Slow your speech by slowing your breath. He asks you to practice one small thing right now. He says, imagine you are about to speak. Imagine you are about to send a message. Imagine you are about to answer a question. And then, instead of rushing, imagine you take one long exhale first. Not to be dramatic, not to be spiritual. Just one long exhale, because one long exhale is a pause, and pause is power. You take the long exhale now, in the temple, and you feel how it changes your body. The jaw softens, the shoulders drop, the heart becomes less reactive, the mind becomes less sharp. You realize that so much harm is simply speed. Speed in words, speed in judgments, speed in reactions. And the fresh start can begin with slowness. The teacher tells you a quiet story to place this understanding deeper. A novice once asked an old monk, how do you remain calm when people speak harshly? The old monk said, when someone throws a coal at you, you do not catch it. The novice frowned. But words come so fast, he said. The old monk smiled. Yes, he said, and you catch them quickly. You catch them with your pride, with your fear, with your anger. Then you burn. The novice asked, what should I do instead? The old monk said, let the coal fall. Feel the heat in the air, but do not grab it. Breathe. Then choose your response like you would choose a step on an icy path. Slowly. You understand. Harsh words are coals. Your anxious mind catches them because it wants to protect you, but catching them burns you. The practice is not pretending the coal does not exist. The practice is letting it fall, breathing, and choosing your step. Then the teacher shifts from speech to action, because action is where peace becomes a life. A fresh start, he says, does not require grand transformations. It requires one small, skillful action repeated. Repeated. Again that word. The teacher is building your year from repetition, because repetition is how the nervous system learns. Repetition is how the heart becomes steady. Repetition is how a seed becomes a tree. He asks you to consider one small action that reduces suffering, not a dramatic vow, not a huge plan. One small action that makes your life gentler and makes your mind easier to live with. Maybe it is drinking water when you are tense instead of scrolling. Maybe it is going to bed 10 minutes earlier. Maybe it is taking one short walk. Maybe it is tidying one small space so your eyes feel calmer. Maybe it is speaking one honest sentence instead of a long, anxious explanation. Maybe it is stopping yourself from sending a message when you are emotionally flooded and waiting until morning. Maybe it is putting the phone down before sleep. The teacher does not care which action you choose. He cares that it is small enough to be real. Then he teaches you something subtle. You do not do skillful action to become worthy. You do it to become free. Do not turn practice into punishment, he says. Practice is medicine. Medicine, not a whip, not a test. Medicine. You breathe out slowly, and you realize how often you have turned self-improvement into self-attack, how often you have used goals as proof you are not enough, how often you have used discipline as a way to punish your own imperfections. The teacher wants to remove that poison from your fresh start. He wants your year to be built on warmth, not fear. So tonight, he invites you to make a gentle vow, not a vow of perfection, but a vow of kindness in your daily movements. He says, choose one small action and give it a place to live. A home, like you did with the seed. Perhaps it lives when you wake up. Perhaps it lives before you speak at work. Perhaps it lives when you feel anxious. Perhaps it lives before bed. And then he says, protect it with gentleness. Protect it with gentleness. Meaning, if you miss a day, you do not whip yourself. You return. You begin again. That is the practice. Now, the teacher guides you into a metta practice that connects directly to speech and action, because loving kindness is not only an internal feeling, it is a force that shapes behavior when you remember it. He asks you to place your hand over your chest and whisper 3 lines that are like a compass for the day. May my words be gentle. May my actions be wise. May my heart be calm. You repeat them slowly with long exhales, and you notice how the body responds. The jaw softens because you are not preparing for battle. The shoulders soften because you are not bracing for judgment. The belly softens because you are not forcing control. These lines do not guarantee a perfect day. They set direction, and direction is enough. The teacher then speaks about the moments when you will forget. Because you will forget. Because you are human. Because life will pull you. Because emotions will rise. And the anxious mind loves to turn forgetting into proof of failure. So the teacher removes that trap by naming forgetting as part of the path. You will forget, he says, and then you will remember. The remembering is the fresh start. This is a gift. It means every day contains many beginnings. Every time you remember to breathe before speaking, that is a beginning. Every time you remember to soften the jaw, that is a beginning. Every time you choose not to catch the coal, that is a beginning. You do not need a single dramatic New Year moment. You need many small returns. He offers you a simple sequence you can use when you notice you are about to speak from anxiety or act from tension. He calls it stop, soften, choose. Stop, pause for one breath. Soften, relax the jaw and shoulders. Choose, speak or act from kindness. You practice it in your imagination now. Imagine a situation that usually triggers you. A message, a comment, a request, a criticism. Imagine the tightness rising. Then imagine you stop. One long exhale. Imagine you soften. Jaw, shoulders, belly. Then imagine you choose. You speak fewer words. You speak more honestly. You speak more gently. Or you do not speak at all. You let the coal fall. The teacher says, fewer words can be kinder. Silence can be wise. A pause can be compassion. You breathe out slowly and feel how calming that is, because so much anxiety comes from the belief that you must respond immediately. that you must explain yourself perfectly, that you must be understood, that you must fix discomfort instantly. The teacher is teaching you a different strength, patience. Then, because the mind can easily turn practice into self-judgment, he speaks directly to your inner critic, the one that watches you, even while you are trying to heal. If you use the teaching to attack yourself, he says, you have missed the teaching. This sentence feels like a door opening, because you realize how often you have tried to be good in a way that makes you harsh, how often you have tried to be spiritual in a way that tightens your chest. The teacher is asking you for something kinder and more honest, to be human and to keep returning. Now he brings the teaching back to sleep, because sleep is the foundation of your fresh start, and the night is not a place for planning and punishment. The teacher wants you to end this night with a feeling that you can carry, steadiness without strain. He asks you to imagine tomorrow as a simple path, not a mountain, not a battlefield, a path. And on this path, you carry 3 small tools: a breath, a pause, and a kind sentence. That is enough for a beginning. You do not need to solve everything. You need to walk with awareness. He offers you a short verse, slow and steady, something that can settle into the mind like a lullaby and keep you from drifting into anxious planning. 1 breath before words, 1 pause before haste. I walk with soft kindness and leave no bitter taste. You repeat it softly, and the rhythm itself slows you down. Now, as you sit in the dim candlelight, the teacher gives you a final instruction for this 10th night, an instruction that holds the whole teaching in one simple direction. Do not let your fresh start be an idea. Let it be a habit of gentleness. So you breathe in slowly. You breathe out long and warm. You let your shoulders sink. You let your hands rest open. You let your face soften. And you offer yourself the same simple wishes you have returned to again and again, because repetition is the heart becoming trained. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. Then you add the day compass again, softly, as if placing it beside your sleeping mind like a small lantern. May my words be gentle. May my actions be wise. May my heart be calm. And now you stop speaking inside. You let words fade. You let the breath remain. You let the temple's quiet hold you. If thoughts come, let them come, but do not chase them. If plans come, let them come, but do not grip them. Tonight, you are not required to design your entire year. Tonight, you are only required to rest, because rest is the soil where wise speech and wise action grow. Rest is the foundation of patience. Rest is the beginning of gentleness. The candles continue their soft flicker. The teacher remains still. Your breath becomes slower. Your body becomes heavier. And you begin to feel something stable and quiet. The sense that a fresh start is not a single moment of motivation, but a life trained by small pauses, soft words, and gentle actions, repeated until they become natural. Repeated until your mind no longer needs to fight to be calm, because calm has become the way you move. And with that steady feeling, sleep approaches again, not forced, not chased, but welcomed, like a long exhale turning into silence. On the 11th night, you enter the candlelit temple and feel something that surprises you, because the mind is quieter in many ways now, and yet there is still a thin thread of tension running through you, like a faint humming behind the silence, and you realize that the anxious mind is clever. When it cannot keep you awake with fear, it keeps you awake with identity, with comparison, with the subtle question, who am I becoming? And the even sharper question, am I doing this right? The candles burn low along the floor, warm and dim. The shadows gather softly like a protective cloak. The air is cool enough to slow your breath, and the teacher sits in the center as always, Buddha as a human monk. Eyes closed, posture steady, face calm, not trying to impress the night, not trying to conquer it, simply resting in it. You sit down and begin in the way you have learned to begin. You soften the jaw. You let the shoulders drop. You soften the belly. And you lengthen the exhale until the body hears the message it needs most. You can stop defending your image now. You can stop proving yourself now. You can rest. Tonight, the teacher speaks about the self, and this teaching is gentle but deep, because the idea of self is one of the mind's favorite places to cling. The mind clings to success, clings to failure, clings to labels, clings to stories, clings to being good, clings to being bad, clings to being strong, clings to being broken, because as long as the mind can fix you into a story, it feels like it has something solid to stand on. But the story becomes a cage, the label becomes a chain, and the anxious mind becomes anxious, partly because it is defending an identity that can never be fully secured. The teacher speaks softly, and his voice feels like candlelight moving over wood. You are not your thoughts, he says. You are not your feelings. You are not your labels. You are the knowing of them. The knowing of them. You breathe out slowly, because you recognize how much suffering comes from believing every thought is you. A thought says, I'm failing, and you become failure. A thought says, I'm behind, and you become behind. A thought says, I'm not enough, and you become not enough. A thought says, I must be perfect, and you become a prisoner of perfection. But the teacher is pointing to something quieter and freer. You are the awareness that can see the thought, and what can be seen is not the same as what you are. He asks you to do something very simple, because simplicity is how this teaching lands in the nervous system instead of becoming another philosophy. He says, close your eyes and listen for one thought. You listen, and soon a thought appears, perhaps about the day, perhaps about tomorrow, perhaps about your practice, perhaps about your life. The teacher asks you not to fight it, not to judge it, not to follow it, only to notice it. Now, he says, say inwardly, a thought is here. A thought is here. Not, I am this thought. A thought is here. You feel the difference immediately. The mind loosens. The thought becomes an object, like a cloud, and you become the sky. The sky is not threatened by the cloud. The sky does not chase the cloud. The sky does not need the cloud to disappear before it can exist. The sky simply remains wide. The teacher guides you further. Now, he says, listen for a feeling. Perhaps there is calm. Perhaps there is a small restlessness. Perhaps there is tenderness. Perhaps there is fatigue. Whatever it is, you notice it like a wave inside the body. The teacher again gives you the same simple naming, because naming is a doorway out of identification. Say inwardly, a feeling is here. A feeling is here. Not, I am this feeling. A feeling is here. You feel the space open again. Feelings come and go. They rise and pass. But the awareness that notices them can remain steady, like a mountain watching weather move across its slopes. The teacher speaks again, softly. The anxious mind clings to identity because it wants certainty. But the self you cling to is not solid. It is a stream. A stream. You remember how many nights you have tried to control the river, how many times you have tried to trap the moon in the bowl, and now the teacher is showing you the same truth in a new place. Even the self is a river. Even your personality is a changing set of conditions. Even your moods are weather. Even your story changes depending on where you stand. And if you cling to a self as if it is a stone, you will be anxious, because the river cannot become stone. He tells you a Zen story, quiet and clear. A student once asked a master, "Who am I?" The master did not answer directly. He brought the student to a pond at night. The pond reflected the moon and the trees and the lanterns. The master asked, "What do you see?" The student said, "I see the moon in the water." The master asked, "Is the moon in the water?" The student hesitated. The master said, "The water reflects. The moon remains above. If the water shakes, the reflection shakes. But the moon is not harmed." Then the master asked, "If you are shaken, what remains?" The student stood silent because he felt the question land in his body. He realized that what remains is the awareness itself, the knowing, the presence that witnesses shaking without being destroyed by it. You breathe out slowly because you understand the teaching. Anxiety is not only fear of the future. Anxiety is also fear of losing the story of yourself, fear of being seen as wrong, fear of being seen as weak, fear of failing your own image. But if you learn to rest as awareness, the story becomes lighter. You stop defending it like a fortress. You stop treating every mistake as a threat to identity. And the nervous system relaxes because it no longer believes survival depends on being perfect. The teacher then points to a subtle trap, the spiritual identity. Even practice can become a costume the ego wears, and when it does, it becomes another reason for anxiety. You begin to worry about doing it right, being good, meditating properly, being calm enough, being wise enough. The teacher's calm voice cuts through that gently. If you use practice to build a new identity, he says, you will suffer again. Because identity is always defended, and defense is always tension. But the Buddha's path is not about building a shiny new self. It is about seeing through the clinging that makes the self heavy. So tonight, the teacher offers you a fresh start, not as an identity, but as a freedom. You do not have to be a certain kind of person to rest. You do not have to be a perfect meditator to sleep. You do not have to be spiritually impressive. You only have to be present. He guides you into a practice called just this, a practice so simple it disarms the anxious mind. On the inhale, he says, silently say, just this breath. On the exhale, say, just this moment, just this breath, just this moment. You repeat it slowly, and as you repeat, the mind loses its appetite for identity, because identity lives in time. Identity lives in comparisons between yesterday and tomorrow. Identity lives in the idea of becoming. But just this lives here, and here is always simpler than your story. The teacher then speaks about self-compassion again, but he ties it to the teaching of not-self in a way that heals shame. When you see thoughts as thoughts, he says, you stop taking them as verdicts. This means the harsh inner critic becomes less powerful because it is exposed as weather, not truth. He asks you to imagine the inner critic as a voice in the wind. Sometimes it blows hard. Sometimes it blows softly. But you do not have to obey the wind. You can feel it and still keep walking. So when the critic says, you're not doing enough, you answer calmly, a thought is here. When the critic says, you're behind, you answer calmly, a thought is here. When the critic says, you'll fail, you answer calmly, a thought is here. Then you return to the breath. You soften the jaw. You lengthen the exhale. You do not fight the thought, because fighting is still attachment. You simply stop believing it is you. Now the teacher guides you into loving kindness, because awareness without warmth can become dry, and dryness can become another kind of hardness. The heart needs warmth. The mind needs softness. So he asks you to place your hand over your chest and speak to yourself not as an identity, but as a living being, a breathing being, a human being who wants peace. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. Then he adds a gentle line that connects directly to tonight's teaching. May I be free from the weight of labels. May I rest as awareness. Weight of labels. Rest as awareness. You repeat them slowly, and you feel how the chest becomes lighter because labels are heavy. Labels demand you maintain a shape. Awareness is lighter because it can hold any shape without clinging. The teacher offers a short verse, because verses slip into the nervous system like a lullaby and do their work quietly. Thoughts are clouds, feelings are rain. I am the sky, and I remain. You repeat it once, maybe twice, and you feel the simplicity of it settle into the body. Now the teacher gives you one last practical teaching, because the mind will return to identity in daylight, and he wants you to have a tool. He says, when you feel anxious, ask, what am I clinging to right now? Maybe you are clinging to being right. Maybe you are clinging to being liked. Maybe you are clinging to certainty. Maybe you are clinging to being seen as competent. Maybe you are clinging to control. When you see the clinging, you have already loosened it, because seeing is the beginning of release. Then he says, and ask, what remains if I release this, even a little? Often what remains is breath. What remains is the floor under your feet. What remains is the fact that you are alive. What remains is awareness itself. And awareness is enough to rest in, even when life is uncertain. The candles flicker softly. The shadows remain calm. The teacher returns to stillness, and you return to the breath, to the long exhale, to the open hands, to the soft jaw. If thoughts arise, you name. A thought is here. If feelings arise, you name. A feeling is here. Then you return to just this breath, just this moment. And as you continue, something deep begins to happen. Not dramatic, not loud, but real. The mind stops trying so hard to be someone, and in that stopping, it becomes quieter. The nervous system relaxes because it no longer feels it must protect an identity at all costs. The heart becomes softer because it is no longer measuring itself against an image, and sleep approaches with less resistance because there is less to defend. Before the night ends, you offer yourself the final wishes again, slow and warm, like closing a temple door gently. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. May I rest as awareness. Then you let the words fade. You let the breath remain. You let the sky of awareness hold everything without gripping. And in that wide, quiet sky, the clouds of thought drift more slowly. The rain of feeling becomes gentle, and sleep arrives naturally, like a moon reflected on still water, calm and whole, not trapped, not forced, simply present. On the 12th night, you enter the candlelit temple and feel something like the end of a long journey, not because the journey is truly finished, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you can sense that you have been training a new way of being, a new posture inside the mind, and even if it is still young, even if it is still fragile, it is real, and you can feel it the way you feel a new path in the forest after you have walked it again and again, the way the ground begins to remember your steps, the way the air begins to smell familiar, the way the body begins to settle faster the moment you arrive. The candles burn low along the floor, warm and dim. The shadows gather softly like a cloak that protects rather than threatens, and the air is cool enough to slow your breath without effort. The teacher sits in the center as always, Buddha as a human monk. Eyes closed, posture steady, face calm, not trying to create a miracle, not trying to prove a point, simply embodying a truth that does not need decoration. Peace is possible when you stop fighting the present. You sit down and you begin the way you have learned to begin, because you have learned that the beginning is not a small detail. It is the foundation. You soften the jaw as if letting go of a hidden argument you have been carrying all day. You let the shoulders drop as if placing a heavy burden on the ground beside you. You soften the belly because the belly holds the nervous system's old alarms. And you lengthen the exhale until it feels like the body is gently turning down the volume of everything, until the breath becomes a slow, warm river moving through you without urgency. Tonight, the teacher does not introduce something completely new, because you have already been given many keys, and too many keys can become noise. Tonight, he gathers the keys into one ring and places it in your hand with a calm simplicity. He speaks about a quality that holds everything together and makes the path feel humane instead of harsh, something many anxious minds forget because they are always looking ahead, always scanning for danger, always demanding certainty. Tonight, he speaks about appreciation, quiet gratitude, not as a performance, not as forced positivity, but as a gentle recognition of what is already here, because what is already here is often enough to soften the heart, and a softened heart sleeps more easily. The anxious mind, he says softly, lives in what is missing. He pauses, and the pause itself feels like candlelight settling in the air. But the wise heart, he continues, can also see what is present. You breathe out slowly because you know the habit of missingness, the habit of scanning for what is not done, what is not perfect, what is not secure, what is not guaranteed. Missingness turns a good day into a list of threats. Missingness turns love into fear. Missingness turns a fresh start into a test. Missingness drains the nervous system because it teaches the body that the world is always incomplete and therefore always unsafe. But presence is different. Presence is not denial of difficulty. Presence is simply seeing clearly what exists right now without twisting it into a weapon. The teacher asks you to practice the simplest form of gratitude because simple gratitude is sleep-friendly. It does not excite the mind. It does not demand emotion. It only turns your attention toward what is steady. Name 3 things, he says, that are supporting you right now. Not 3 impressive things, not 3 achievements, not 3 future goals, 3 supports. Supports are quiet. Supports are often invisible. And because they are invisible, the anxious mind forgets them. So you name them inwardly, slowly, like touching beads on a string. The floor beneath you, holding your weight without complaint. The breath, arriving and leaving without needing permission. The candlelight, warm and gentle, turning darkness into shelter instead of fear. Or the fact that you have a body that is still trying to heal. Or the fact that you are here, practicing, not because you are perfect, but because you are willing. You notice what happens when you name supports. The shoulders soften, the jaw loosens, the chest becomes less tight. The nervous system receives a quiet message. You are not alone in holding yourself up. Something is already holding you. The teacher nods slightly, as if he can feel your body learning. Gratitude, he says, is not a polite thought. Gratitude is a change of inner climate. A climate, you understand. In a harsh climate, nothing grows easily. In a harsh climate, You survive by bracing. In a harsh climate, anxiety becomes normal. But in a gentler climate, you can breathe, you can soften, you can learn, you can sleep. Gratitude, in this teaching, is not decoration. It is warmth added to the inner world, so the mind stops freezing itself. Then the teacher gathers the lessons you have been living through these nights, and he names them in a way that feels like a calm weaving, not like a lecture. You learn to begin again, he says, instead of punishing yourself. You learned to turn regret into wisdom, he continues, instead of turning it into guilt. You learned to plant one seed, he says, instead of demanding a forest. You learned to care without clinging, he says, instead of gripping the river. You learned to widen kindness, he says, until the world felt less like an enemy. You learned to loosen anger, he says, without abandoning boundaries. You learned to release the stones, he says, one by one, without lying to yourself. You learned to hold intention and let go of outcome, he says, so your heart could be free. You learned to speak and act with gentleness, he says, so you stop creating storms. You learned to rest as awareness, he says, so thoughts become clouds and not verdicts. As he speaks, you realize something quietly powerful. You are not becoming someone new through force. You are remembering something natural through practice. The path is not a costume. It is a returning. Then the teacher offers the final teaching of this 12-night cycle, and it is one of the deepest medicines for anxiety, because it removes the hidden belief that everything depends on one perfect moment, one perfect decision, one perfect year. Do not imagine, he says gently, that a fresh start is a door you walk through once. He pauses again, and the candlelight flickers as if agreeing. A fresh start, he continues, is the doorway you can step through in any breath. Any breath. This changes the whole meaning of time. It means you do not have to wait for the morning to begin again. You do not have to wait for a new month. You do not have to wait for a new year. You do not have to wait until you feel confident. If you notice you are lost, that noticing is already the beginning. If you notice you are tense, that noticing is already the beginning. If you notice you are harsh, that noticing is already the beginning. You can begin again right there, by softening, by breathing, by choosing one kind step. The teacher gives you a simple practice to seal this understanding into the nervous system, a practice that is so small you can do it anywhere, even in a crowded place, even in the middle of a hard day, even when your mind is tired. He calls it the 3 returns. First return, return to the breath. Second return, return to the body. Third return, return to kindness. He asks you to do it now, slowly, with him. Return to the breath. You feel one inhale, you lengthen one exhale. Return to the body. You soften the jaw, the shoulders, the belly, just a little. Return to kindness. You whisper one line, quiet as a candle in the chest. May I be at ease. You do it, and you feel how quickly the body understands. The body loves this. The body has wanted this. The body has been tired of emergency. Then, because the heart is not only trained by technique but also by meaning, the teacher speaks about why kindness matters so much on this path, especially at night. Harshness, he says, does not create awakening. Harshness creates resistance. And resistance, he continues, creates a mind that cannot rest. This is why kindness is not optional. Kindness is the condition that allows learning without fear. Kindness is the soil where wisdom grows. Kindness is what makes your fresh start sustainable. He tells you one last Zen story, soft and simple, like a story meant to be carried into sleep rather than debated. A traveler once came to a monastery after walking for many days through cold wind. The traveler's hands were cracked, his feet were sore, and his mind was full of worry. He said to the master, "Teach me the fastest way to peace." The master did not answer with a long explanation. He simply placed a warm bowl of water in front of the traveler and said, "Wash your hands slowly." The traveler looked confused. "Is this the teaching?" he asked. The master nodded. "You have been living as if everything is an emergency," he said. "Wash your hands as if your life is worth caring for." The traveler lowered his hands into the warm water, and for the first time in weeks, he felt his body soften. The master said quietly, "This is how it begins, not with speed, with care. Wash your hands as if your life is worth caring for." The sentence stays in you because it is not only about hands. It is about the way you breathe. It is about the way you speak. It is about the way you treat your own mind when it trembles. It is about the way you move through the year. Now the teacher brings you into the final loving-kindness practice of this cycle, a practice meant to be gentle, dim, and sleep-friendly, a practice that leaves no sharp edges in the mind. He asks you to place your hand over your chest again, lightly, like a warm reminder rather than a command. On the long exhale, you whisper, "May I be safe?" On the next long exhale, "May I be calm?" On the next long exhale, "May I be at ease?" Then he adds a line for gratitude, not gratitude as a performance, but gratitude as a soft recognition. On the long exhale, "Thank you for this breath." On the next long exhale, "Thank you for this moment." On the next long exhale, "Thank you for this chance to begin again." You repeat them slowly. The mind grows quieter because gratitude does not feed the mind's hunger to chase. Gratitude feeds the heart's ability to rest. Then he invites you to widen the wish, but only gently, only in a way that does not overwhelm. May those I love be safe. May those I love be calm. May those I love be at ease. May those I do not know be safe. May those I do not know be calm. May those I do not know be at ease. And then, because balance is wisdom, you bring it back home. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be at ease. The teacher's voice becomes quieter, as if he is speaking from very far away, as if his words are now meant to dissolve into silence. "Do not carry these nights like a heavy book," he says. "Carry them like a lamp." A lamp does not weigh you down. A lamp only gives light when you need it. A lamp can be small. A lamp can be carried easily. One breath can be a lamp. One softened jaw can be a lamp. One kind sentence can be a lamp. He lets silence settle, and you sit inside that silence like sitting inside a warm cave. You feel the breath moving slowly. You feel the weight of your body supported. You feel the openness of your hands. You feel the mind no longer fighting as hard to be someone, to control everything, to rehearse every outcome. If thoughts come, you do not chase them. If memories come, you do not wrestle them. You simply remember the ring of keys in your hand, the 3 returns, the open palms, the long exhale, the candle of kindness. And before you let the night carry you fully, you repeat the simplest truth of all, the truth that makes every day a fresh start without pressure, the truth that calms the anxious mind because it removes the demand to be perfect. I can begin again in this breath. You let that sentence sink into the exhale. You let it soften your chest. You let it quiet your forehead. You let it loosen your shoulders. Then you stop speaking inside. You let the candlelight flicker. You let the air remain cool. You let the teacher remain still. You let your breath slow until it becomes almost silent. And sleep approaches, not as something you force, not as something you chase, but as something that naturally comes when you stop gripping the river, when you stop holding stones, when you stop defending a story, when you remember what is already supporting you, when you return, breath, body, kindness, again and again, gently, until the mind finally understands what the temple has been teaching all along, that peace is not far away. Peace is a practice, and tonight, in this dim candlelight, you are already practicing it, and that is enough.